People hear us in the chat. Can we just really? Good morning, Steve. Can you hear me, Gary?
Yes, can you hear me? I can't hear you now. Your microphone's crackling, Nathan. Can't hear anything you're saying.
Is that any better?
That's better.
Is that better?
Yeah, loud's better. Crackly.
Legs. Yes, no.
It's all right when you talk like that, but when you're moving, it's crackling.
Stay still then. Right, you can hear. Everyone can hear us. Right. Would you like to kick it off then, Gary? As sort of thing, and I'll try and stay still. I've got a new headset.
Sounds like you're typing. Right. That's a different one.
Kick it off then, Gary.
No, I ain't got anything this end, Nathan. I've got no chat, nothing. All I've got is this phone, so I ain't going to be able to read any chat or anything like that. So, we're here to talk about Article 61, what it means, why we do it, and what we can get out of it, basically. And that is, we do it because it gives us the lawful right under the Constitution to get redress and to distress and annoy the government in any way, shape, or form we see fit, as long as it's peaceful and lawful. And until we get redress, until common law and the Constitution is fully restored in the realm. And that's basically the reason why we do it. So, next one, Knife. Can't hear you again now.
Can you hear me, Gary?
I can hear you
No?
now, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the thing. Jenny, when they say how many roughly do we need? This is the wrong questions. This is the wrong way. It's like it's not about how many do we need. Technically speaking, everybody has to by law go into this. It's not how many do we need. It's how many people are going to realise that by law you are breaking the law if you don't enter into 61 because you're aiding and abetting the crimes against the people.
Yeah.
Let me put it into context.
Yeah, it's a lawful duty.
In our laws, if you take murder, for instance, murder is contrary to common law, okay, because you're taking a life. It's a death. You're causing a death. That's why there's a high penalty. But murder isn't the highest crime on our books, actually, in our law books or within our laws. Sedition and treason are the highest, and obviously the forms thereof of like misprision of treason, stuff like that. Because treason and sedition and treason are classes. It's kind of like a mass murder. If you murder somebody, that you end one life, but if you commit treason, it's the death of a nation. So it's treated like mass murder. And if you do not,
Can't hear you.
how about now? Lawfully, you have to say
Gone again.
now. Any, it's go.
It's just crackling like you're cooking bacon. I think Nathan's gone to get another set of headphones, ladies and gentlemen, because those are terrible. I don't know whether you can hear him, but I certainly can't hear him. I can't hear a word he's saying. I don't even know what he said. After what I said, I don't know what Nathan said, so I can't elaborate on what he said because I didn't hear the word of it. So, but he's right in the one respect. What bit I did here is it's your lawful duty to go into Article 61. You're actually complicit in the treason and the tyranny if you don't. Um, but a lot of people don't realise or know that, you see. That's the problem we've got. You back, Nath?
Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you now.
Wire. Stephen's right. I need a new wire. It's my cable.
Yeah.
If I don't move, and I stay relatively still, I can be able to talk. But yes, this is what was I saying? Yes, basically, why we are sitting back and we haven't got into Article 61 because it was actually invoked by the Barons in 2001. We're actually aiding and abetting everything while we're voting, why we're not actually doing anything to stop it. And by the way, going on Facebook, unless you actually do the lawful paperwork, we're not stopping it. Okay, voting for the same people who are continuing to do this is not stopping or solving the problem. Okay,
No.
Parliament is treasonous. Okay, Parliament is treasonous. When you understand that, you'll understand all these people trying to get into politics, all these people that are going along with Parliament and voting. You're actually aiding and abetting. You're helping them commit these crimes. Okay, so we have a remedy. It's called a security clause for a reason. It's when we find our crown or our Parliament. It was actually crown when it was seen, but Parliament belongs to the crown. Okay, so it comes under the umbrella of the crown. So it's Her Majesty's Parliament, basically the monarchy's parliament. So they deal with that. It's part of that. So whatever they do, it's in her name. Same as whatever they do is in our name. Because what people don't seem to realise is when you sign up to vote, you actually become under the Representation and the People's Act.
Yeah.
That basically sets out the rules that it's not meant to, but it sets out some rules that a lot of people don't understand. And what you're doing is you're basically giving over your consent before they do it. So imagine someone says, right, I need your consent for saying, but I'm not going to tell you just yet. So promise me you'll do it. And you go, yes, I promise. And then they go, right, I want you to murder that person. You just promise you have to do it. That's basically what they're saying. You give your consent before they act. So anything they do in the 4 years that they're in power,
Yeah.
you've already agreed to when you voted. That's why I've never voted. I've never agreed to be governed. I just never. It's not a case of not never having anyone decent to vote for. I don't agree with the way Parliament and the way things have gone. So I've never voted because I will not back these in what they're doing. It's clear and simple.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you don't agree with something, you don't carry on doing it. So we've got to start understanding this.
We've got
But
a
yeah,
tumultuous assembly. That's what we've got, Nathan.
it is. Parliament is actually unlawful. They're actually now a tumultuous assembly. They have been for some years. Jay Topo, yes, you are right. Malfeasance is a wrongdoing. It's misconduct. It's actually what you call premeditated misconduct. So if you, because you're put in a position of trust as an official in a public office, or you take an oath of office, because you're in a position of trust, anything you do that basically goes against that oath
Yeah.
or the process means that you're actually committing malfeasance.
Yeah.
It goes. It's the same denomination as maleficent.
Yeah.
But this is exactly
So,
this is the thing. People got to realise this. The reason why we're going to Article 61 is because it is our lawful remedy. It's how we take the power away from these people. I mean, so many people are on Facebook and other platforms and they're saying, "Well, why is the WEF and everyone doing this?" It's because you haven't done anything to stop them. And this is the
no.
thing. They do all this with paperwork. Okay, the European Union took all the power away from us and tried making our parliament like a local council within Europe, and they done it all with paperwork. Okay, so you've got to do the same thing. You've got to do paperwork. That's why we do the lawful paperwork. We don't argue the legal. We argue the lawful because it's the only thing higher than the legal system is the law. And this is what a lot of people got to understand. When people do say that acts and statutes don't apply under Article 61, they don't, because technically speaking, House's Laws of England states this quite clearly that it needs consent from the individual. Hello, darling. It needs consent from the individual, the man or woman, because it's to do with working within a corporation. If you're a man and you're not an entity like your legal fiction, like your name in all capitals, then you live under a completely separate rules to a business does. Okay, business have their rules. I mean that's legal. That's the world of commerce. If you're a man or a woman, you live amongst the laws of the land. You live in a law, what you call lawfully abiding, because you abide by the laws that keep society ticking, basically. Yeah, that is true, Jay Topo. Yeah, if it changed anything, we wouldn't be allowed to do it. And this is the thing. This is where people need to if it wasn't enough, okay, if this wasn't, because I mean, the last time we used it in England was 1688, the Glorious Revolution. I mean, that should tell you enough. All you need to hear there. That was 16. But they've actually used Magna Carta as a little. I think it was 1998 in America. Jack Straw in 2000, when we actually started ratifying and putting the Human Rights Act of 1998 into our statute laws, not our common law or constitutional law, but statute law. So it's parliamentary law. So it's pretty much parliamentary policy that we have to agree to. Jack Straw actually said in 2000, just for Article 61, that the Magna Carta is just as binding on the Crown today as it was the day it was sealed at Runnymede.
Sealed.
Yep, and the clues in that word in there, sealed at Runnymede, there was only one charter that was sealed at Runnymede. The rest were reissues of the Magna Carta done by consecutive kings. Because you've got to remember, there's legal and lawful. Magna Carta is our lawful rights.
It's also, like I said, Nathan, the last live I think we did, or what I did by myself, where if the Magna Carta no longer exists, why would you have an 800th anniversary in 2015 celebrating the Magna Carta? Because when you're divorced, if you got divorced after 23 years, in 2 years later or 27 years later, you wouldn't celebrate your silver and your golden wedding, would you, if you're divorced? So if the Magna Carta didn't exist, why are we still celebrating it? Because it's still in full force, that's why.
I mean, another reason why the EU, the UN, want us to go with, especially America, everywhere really, and our courts want us to go with human rights, is because legally the definition of human is beast. It's low. Basically, you're lower than a domesticated animal. You're a wild beast that can't be tamed and can't be controlled. That is your legal definition when you go under the legal definitions that are used, like human, when it's human rights, because it doesn't mean what you think it is. Like I said, in the English language, every word has literally 8 to 16 meanings, depending on how it's used in the sentence. It's grammar, basically. But they trick us a lot. It's like a lot of people already know the whole thing about understanding something. Do you stand under something? And this is where people need to understand, in our laws, we have Latin, French, and English. And a lot of our earliest laws were made around about the time and because of a lot of to and fro between us and France. So when you got things like understand, it means stand under. That is where you kind of get the reversal of French, because French is actually the reversal. So we'd say something like, do you stand under me? Whereas in French, you would say, do you understand me? And this is where we get our wording, and a lot of people don't understand that. And this is what we're trying to get across. I mean, at the moment, we have actually put out the revised version of the Constitutional Movement Worldwide Pack. In that has the step-by-step process to lawful rebellion. There's also going to be some amendments where we're sticking some more information in. We just needed to get it out. It's got the letter to go send to the police. We're going to be adding another letter to that and send to CPS. But a lot of people don't know CMW carried on the arrest that Gary, myself, and about six other people did at the Fabian Society in 2018. Well, we actually followed that through with CMW, and we managed to get the police to back us. In fact, we actually, as the police stated, that we give them evidence of crimes were proven. So the police actually went as far as backing our charges against Keir Starmer, Sadiq Khan, Kate Green, and about 2 or 3 others. They actually backed
Andrew Arup.
Yeah, that's it. They actually backed us and they put it CPS. So when people say a lot of what they say, that's not true. A lot of it is if your paperwork is correct, it works. But the problem with legal paperwork is for everything you've got, they've got 6 things that can counteract it. Whereas the paperwork we use and the laws we're using, they do not have any. How can I say? Just to use Gary's kind of live earlier, the Constitution and common law has no overlord. So statutes and acts cannot override the Constitution. Okay, it cannot override our common law. They are sacrament. Okay, they are above Parliament.
Yeah. This is what people got to start learning. And when you hear people saying, get here, we're under lawful rebellion," if you haven't filled in Article 61, Clause 61, you will not be in lawful rebellion. So you're going there claiming to be in something that you're not.
That's deception, and this is a difference. A lot of
Yeah.
people get a lot of things mixed up. It's like when people say slander. We don't have slander in England. It's not a crime in England. We have what you call defamation of character, which is actually a wider scope than slander. And again, we do have fraud, but under our constitution, under our laws of the land, we don't technically have fraud. We have what you call the crime of deception. Okay, deception has again wider parameters than it will do fraud, because deception covers the mental intent to do so, not just the actual completion of the crime. So this is why things like sedition is a massive part of a lot of constitutions, because the thought or even the inkling or an attempt to try and subvert our laws or our constitution is one of the highest crimes. So this is where a lot of things differ, and this is where it's stupid things, and it will be doing it, because like I said, we've spent the last few years doing things in court, and we've learned a lot about the wording and stuff like that. And it is one word can throw your whole case out, because you're misrepresenting what you're doing and what you're saying. That's why you basically you need to learn the language you're speaking and speak the language you mean. It means what it says, and it says what it means. Once we do that, but back to 61, basically, they don't want us to know. Okay, so we've had since 1215, and it's been there. Like I said, that kings have reissued Magna Carta, but it's your choice. At no point it's like they've had to change the wording on the government website to enforce to what they seem as valid. So now, when you read the government websites, it's what the government seems is valid to them. Okay, you've got to remember, the government is the British East India Tea Company by any other name. Great Britain is what used to be the British East India Tea Company. Okay, the one that took over all the countries, pretty much put opium and heroin into China and made them all addicts, things like that, because they didn't want them to take away certain powers and stuff. Yeah, that's corporation, the one that we've all been tricked to think is our country, and it's not. Our country is England. The corporation that it was allowed to, let me word this correctly. The corporation that was allowed to be caretakers of our estate, as it were, was the British East India Tea Company. It's Great Britain. It's the UK Limited, basically.
It's the Union flag.
Yep, and that was done in the 1700s, 1701, I believe. The Act of Settlement.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, it's the Act of Settlement, and this is this is the wording. It's like some of the things that have been said. It's like Gary said, like the word overlord. A lot of people need to really be looking at dictionaries now. Oxford English Law Dictionary, because I get a bit sort of dismayed, really. It's a case of, yes, you can reference Black's laws, but a lot of the time that's why you'll be knocked back in court and other places, because technically speaking, for quite a few years now, a number of decades, we've used the Oxford Dictionary of Law for interpretation. I mean, you can argue. There is a lot there. You got the Black's Law Dictionary. You have the Commissioner's Dictionary. You have Blackstone's Police Dictionary. You have multiple dictionaries, but they all, when all said and done, will all boil down, and the final definition will always be put across with the Oxford Dictionary of Law. So buy yourself an Oxford Dictionary of Law. Start looking up the words you're using and the words that are using against you.
Yeah. It's shocking to think that, people in this day and age don't know the Constitution, and it's only because they've took it out the school curriculum, ladies and gentlemen, and we've stood for it. Really, that's the only reason.
This is the thing. It is exactly it. It's acquiescence. It's by doing nothing, you're actually doing something. You're allowing it. Like I said, it's like I've said this as an analogy before. It's like we used to be known not that long ago. I mean, as short back as the 80s and 90s, we was known as a nation of complainers. That's why we had TV programs dedicated to complaints, like Points of View, because we've been taught for many generations that if you don't say no, even if it doesn't directly affect you, if you don't say no, it may affect you later on. So if you don't say no, you're basically saying yes. Yeah, you're basically saying yes. So you've got to say no. You've got to have an opinion. You've got to have a stance.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's acquiescence. You're giving consent by not doing anything. Because you haven't said no, I don't agree with this, or I'm not. No, I'm not doing that. You're doing it. It's one of them. J Topo, the police did actually do. They stated quite wrong, because as they state when we done that arrest, it's like we do lawful arrest. Well, we done a citizen's arrest under Section 3 of the Criminal Law Act of 1967. We was also done that with the actions because we was trying to remedy the tyranny and the treasonous actions under Article 61 of Magna Carta. So we was actually doing a lawful arrest as well, because we was using Section 3. If you read it, this is why I've never used Section 24A, because I don't use the Police and Evidence Act. That's not for me. I have Section 3, and under Section 3, it is actually police officers, anybody who's took an oath of office, so a police officer or anyone from the army can't use Section 3. It states in Section 3 of the Criminal Law Act of 1967, because it is based on our common law and our constitutional duty to uphold the law. So, if, for instance, if you walk along the street and you see a crime being committed and you do nothing to stop that crime, in the eyes of English law, you have actually helped that crime be perpetrated. And that's why you've got to understand you have to act against them. It's not a case of waiting for someone to do something and then you'll just join in if it works, because it won't work unless we all stop it. And it's one of them. But the police did actually carry it through to the point where the police backed our charges and put them to CPS. So they did back it. They backed us 100%. They put it to CPS. It's CPS that actually just shelved it and said it wasn't in the public's interest, because as far as they're concerned, with some of the liaison I had, Sadiq Khan, for instance, had more people vote for him to be London Mayor than the 8 people that were standing there wanted him arrested and have him prosecuted. So until people actually start to back the right thing, so for instance, we can actually still do that case. People don't know this, but I've actually had we've got that case, and there's other evidence of sedition and treason which I've actually had within court cases put onto court record. So we do have this and we can act, but we're not going to waste our chances. This is a problem, and this is what happened then. Where people don't back it, that it's not going to happen. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. You're going to. I mean, me and Gary was talking earlier, and this is one of the frustrating things about what we did, because we can go out, we can arrest all these MPs, and I mean a lot of people put themselves at risk. We technically did, because we don't know if they are going to be treasonous and try and think. But the reason why me, Gary, and the rest of us have never been arrested for it, and the police backed it, is because every T was crossed, every I was dotted, everything we did was completely lawful. Not legal, but it was completely lawful. We did adhere to make sure we didn't step into to be illegal in things. But as I've always said, mens rea allows us to commit a lesser crime to stop a greater crime. So if you know your laws and know your rights, then it works. But we've never been arrested for that. Never. We've never even had the police even contact us other than to basically back us and say they're submitting the charges and to take any more evidence of crimes. And this is the thing. But it's not, the CPS won't do it because it takes the people, the will of the people. So if you...
Your mic's gone again, Nathan.
Name to it. Is that better?
Yeah.
You've got to put your name to it. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand, is as a member of our society and our communities, you have to back it. Otherwise, if you don't back it, they're not going to do nothing, because they don't have to. Until the people, I mean, we've just seen a situation where a cinema has just literally stopped basically putting on a multi-million-dollar film that costs to be made because a certain demographic of society have decided to get together, use mob rule, and go down there, and they've actually shown their dissent. So they're actually acting them on say and doing something. Um, Trust me, if you think these people aren't putting paperwork in to back what they're doing when they're doing it, because they've got there's always solicitors and everything in every mosque, everything like that. So they've got all the paperwork, they're doing it all, they do every single stage of it. It's just us that are taught not to do the whole process. It's just like you can go on a march, you can go on a protest, but if you're not doing any paperwork, lawful paperwork to back up what you're doing within the law, then it's toothless. You haven't completed the process. The same with lawful rebellion. You have to complete the process. I mean, uh, we get asked quite a lot, are the barons ready to act yet? Well, the barons did act. They invoked Article 61, so they acted. What they need now is they need the backing of the people, because it's going to come down to basic this. If you don't enter into Article 61, then you're backing the government that is selling our country off to the World Economic Forum and the One World Government. You're backing that. You're not stopping it. So saying something on Facebook means nothing. And they
Gone again.
how about now?
Yeah.
So if you're not in Article 61, stop moaning about what's going on, because you're actually doing nothing to stop it, okay? You're actually backing them, because you're doing absolutely nothing in the eyes of the law to actually stop them from doing what they're doing. That's why we have Article 61. That's why the Kings wanted it to try and reissue Magna Carta and leave it out of it. So people, over time, people would just read the newer ones and they wouldn't read the original that's still in force. It's still relevant today. It's literally the biggest human, well, I don't like to call them human rights, but it's the biggest civil rights document ever in the history of our nation, or any other nation for that matter. That's why America and most countries have borrowed Magna Carta for the basis of their constitution. That's
That's
why
why
they.
it's called the Great Charter.
Yep, and you also have Carta de Foresta, which is the Charter of the Forest, which was done in 2017. Which a lot of people say it's one document. It isn't. It's two documents, but they are classed as the same thing because it's an extension of Magna Carta. But this, I mean, I've mentioned this quite a lot of times. I don't know many people actually talk about Charter of the Forest. A lot of people don't seem to know it exists, but that was invoked in actually 2017, and that's the one that stops the government stopping us from getting fuel for our homes.
1217, no.
Yep,
1217, you keep saying 2017, you keep saying
it's because I'm
1217.
thinking the thing. Yeah, 1217. Sorry,
Yeah.
but this is the thing. It within the Carta de Foresta, the Charter, Great Charter of the Forest. Basically, it allows us to go and catch our food. It allows us to go and get fuel for our fires to heat our homes and stuff like that. It stops the powers that be from taxing us and using our inalienable rights to actually have a life and live life to the best things. Because, by the way, the Crown doesn't own the land, we do, and we own everything in it. They're technically speaking a custodian of it, so they oversee it for our benefit. And this is the same as our CESWI KB trust, and it is CESWI KB because it's French. Anyone who's done GCSE French knows CESWI is pronounced CESWI, and it's KB. The same as KSKB. I mean, it's like it's French. But Charter of the Forest is what part of what we need to look into. People need to look into, because that is basically what's going to help us again. Is constitutionally what they're doing with our energy prices and stuff like that. They are forcing us, because then we're not allowed coal fires. We're not allowed this. We're not allowed that. So they are going against our constitutional unenalienable right to gather fuel and food and forage, to have to pay unlawfully for what they will allow us. And this is what people don't understand. The reason why Magna Carta was used in America in 1998 and it's still used today as recently is because it's still valid. I mean, look at the Oxford provisions of 1258. It's just an extension. All it does is bulk out and explain a bit more the rights under Magna Carta. It relies directly on 1215 and not the 1225 or 27 or the 1297, which they're using in courts now. And this is what people need to understand. The Magna Carta that Parliament has repealed is the 1297 Magna Carta, not the 1215 Magna Carta. They can repeal that because it's not. It's basically is Magna Carta is a treaty. Now, a treaty is basically a conclusion of war. So there's a war, there's a treaty, it's a contract. So both sides agree to it. So there's no longer a need for war. That is still binding on the crown today because there was a war. It was in 1215. I mean, we rose up. That's where you get the story of what tile and all that from. We've already fought this, like I said, and this, especially today, people should really resonate with this. Our ancestors have fought many, many times, and many of them have died. Enough millions of lives and blood has been shed so that we can have our freedoms. And this is the problem. It's like we actually have to act. I mean, you said it earlier, Gary. It's like if you look at the D-Day landings, Operation Overlord. I mean, I live in Ramsgate. Okay, many of the boats that went and picked up our forces from the beach came from here in Sandwich, around where I live. Many of them are actually still in our harbour today. These were not military; these were fishermen who basically heard on the radio, jumped in their boats, and just sailed over and basically knew they was literally sailing into sudden death. Certain death. You said this earlier, Gary. They literally was like in the D-Day landings. They was literally willing to know they was going to die. They watched as they come to the beach. They watched people getting mowed down. So when that door dropped on the landing crafts, they knew that they're running forward is possibly mean they're going to die. But they did it because the alternative was too much to even think about. Okay, and you've got to think of it like this now. When you look at the World Economic Forum, like they did in this year, they've said that. I mean, yes, it's been put back 2 years, but they are still planning to actually do it a different way, like the EU have done. If they can't get a treaty put through straight away, they break it up into multiple treaties. They put it within others, and then they'll just slowly put one in and go, right. Well, we'll just clarify this in one. So don't think or rest on your laurels and think we've got 2 years. We haven't. They can't do this. Like I said, it's under our constitution, under Magna Carta, we cannot be ruled by a foreign ruler. No foreign prince or prelate. So the EU, the UN, the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab and his little mates who seem to think they're going to form a one world government with dark winter once they do the next pandemic and never give the power back. We're one of the only countries in the world where no, can't do that. The Queen can't actually agree to half of this. So when people say, "But it's been done by more assent," it's like, yeah, well, let's see Parliament stick to that when we pull out the laws and it shows that the Queen can do no harm or the King can do no harm under the Constitution. So anything the Queen's done that is constitutionally repugnant, once it's raised in a court of law or raised properly by us people, it's void. It's like it never happened. But if we do not voice our opinion, actually put the paperwork in and do this lawfully, we never contest it. So these things carry on. Like I said, lawful rebellion was done in 2001. We could have stopped a lot of this happening. We could have stopped the pandemic and a lot of this if people went under Article 61, because you're actually putting yourself either side of a line. That's why it's called diffidatio. It's about fealty. It's where your loyalty lies. So where does your loyalty lie? Does it lie with the Queen and Parliament that's allowing a foreign entity to attack our country and do away with our rights?
On again.
Now?
Yeah.
So the thing, a lot of people have a problem with the barons, but yeah, I'm not too happy about a lot of the barons. But I mean, we're not dealing with all the barons. We're dealing with 25 named barons that have a constitutional duty above all their business interests and everything like that, which they can be imprisoned for if we actually find that they're not actually doing their constitutional duty. We can also have them removed and have 25 new barons put in if we need to, and 25 new barons will be 25 noble men from the land.
And it's the same as what I said with the monarch, Nathan. Everybody keeps saying, get rid of the monarch, no good, no good. We don't think the monarch's any good at the moment. We think the treasonous and corrupt.
Well, no, it's not that the monarch's.
That they hold.
Yeah, it's not the monarch that's not doing no good, because the monarch is actually the office that the Queen sits within. So it's the throne. So it's the human, the person or the man or woman that sits on the throne that we have a problem with. But I mean, at the moment, I take through learning the history, I've been doing all this with 61 and Magna Carta and that, I take the opinion that our Queen was actually captured and imprisoned in her childhood. The same as we have for many years, with like basically a lot of us for many years have been allowed governments and things like university and that to indoctrinate us to believe that we don't have certain rights and we can't do certain things when we can. We are basically trapped in our own mind. our
It's like,
mind becomes our own prison. And this is what
yeah,
I think's happened to the Queen. I think her advisors, who were adults, and she was still a young person when she took the throne, I think they've been advising her wrong, because if you think what's happening now wasn't planned 100 years ago, because the
yeah,
minimum increments the World Economic Forum and the Masons and any other groups like that work by is 50-year increments. That's the minimum.
yeah.
So if
But
you
it's
don't
like
think that they can't work out 100 years and then plan it and then slowly do it over generations, you've got another thing coming.
yeah, it's like you said, it's all in the wording. It's
Mm,
like when you look at the coronation now, the Queen said in sincerity, and she should have
mm.
actually said in all sincerity.
Exactly. This is the thing, because someone was asking about this the other day, because technically we could argue that the Queen never actually took the throne, and she never seen, because the oath was changed. I'm sorry, but um, the oath to the people can never be changed. Okay, it's like
No,
Gary said, in all sincerity of the terms that were said, the word is key. Like I said, well, most people, if anyone's ever been in trouble with the police, you'll find that most things, most of your case that the police put against you is relying on literally the first word you ever said to a constable, because you may have admitted guilt
mm,
without realising you admit guilt. It's like I said,
yeah,
when you say to when a copper says, constable says, "Well, do you understand what I'm saying?" He's not actually saying, it's like, do you know what I'm saying? Do you understand the words that I'm using, how I'm using them in the context? He's not asking that. He's asking, like,
yeah,
do you stand under what I'm saying? So do you give
yeah,
over? Do you allow me to stand over you and agree to what I'm saying as a statement of fact? That's what they're saying to you.
yeah,
And where you don't know it, you go, yeah. So you've just admitted guilt. And then that's it. That's when the case starts taking off. You're always
yeah,
convicted on your first word, never your last.
yeah. And that's exactly what the Queen did. She said in sincerity instead of in all sincerity. And that was the big,
Mm.
what people have spotted in, because she wasn't being sincere.
Yeah. Well, it says insincerity. So it depends. Are
Yeah,
you being sincere? Because
yeah.
it's not all sincerity, so it doesn't cover. So she's basically in that you could argue it's like, um, yeah, yes, I suppose technically you could argue the fact that where the wording she's used, she's kind of like cut down the parameters. So
She's
it's like,
saying
yeah,
what she's saying is in her opinion, not in all.
yeah, it's like that. So basically, yeah, it is. So what she's basically saying is like, well, I'll be sincere in if I do something, but I don't have to be sincere in everything, because otherwise she would have said all.
Yeah,
Like Gary
and
says, it's all. Like I said,
that's where it fell apart. But a lot of people don't know that. It's like when they changed in 1701, like you said, when they changed from the United Kingdoms,
hmm
they just removed the S, a very subtle thing, and turned us into the United Kingdom.
exactly.
One letter, and it changed the whole demographic from
Mm,
kingdoms where everybody had a right to say, no, we ain't getting involved, to the United Kingdom, where once war was declared, you was part of that kingdom. So
mm,
then you had to go because you was part of that kingdom. Where before you was kingdoms, you all voted individually whether you
yeah.
wanted to get involved or not.
Basically, this is where it's like exactly what you say. It's in 1701 when the Act of Settlement, certain things like where we really see our unalienable rights being trampled on, and our sovereignty actually started being taken from that moment in time. Because, as Gary said, it's in that wording. Because we was a group of kingdoms that was united under what you call the Golden Rule. So we all agreed with the basis of laws that we all have, like you don't murder people, you don't steal, you don't do stuff like that. Was all united within that. I mean, Alfred did this. He united the tribes of England, Wales, and that lot by basically creating a set of but basically what you use is like the Malmentine laws and stuff before, already
Yeah,
established customs and laws that were kind of unwritten rules, but every society knew that if you did it, you'd have that. I mean, it's like the Malmentine laws. These are over 4,000 years old, and they have laws in there to stop you beating your children, stop beating your wife, to not abuse animals. And like I said, we're ignoring all this because the Human Rights Declaration sounds really, really good. But the problem is with the Human Rights Declaration is it's only to be taken into consideration. Your unalienable
yeah,
rights. So if you go under the Constitution, you have rights that cannot be sold, they cannot be transferred, and they definitely can't be taken from you, even technically with your consent. But if you decide that you want to be you want to go for a legal standing, if you do the human rights laws,
Yeah.
then what you're doing is you're going to go under the British Constitution. There is a difference between the British Constitution and the English Constitution. Okay, the
Yeah.
British Constitution is the Constitution of the Corporation of Britain. Okay,
Yeah.
whereas the English Constitution is the Constitution built up over many hundreds of years that were actually enacted and put there by the people. That's
Yeah.
the difference. Okay, there is a difference. The
But
British Constitution, and English Constitution is not the same. The same as British laws are not the same as English laws.
yeah. Because a lot of British law, like you've hit the nail on the head, is corporate law.
Hmm. Maritime law.
It's not. Yeah, it's not common law,
No.
and it's the same as you've hit the nail on the head with the Human Rights Act. That's the United Nations brought that in,
Yep.
and it was man-made
That's the
to dupe people into thinking that they no longer had unalienable, inalienable rights, depending on where you are in the world. It's the same thing, but it's just said differently. But wherever you was in the world, you either had unalienable rights, like we do here, or inalienable rights, example, like they have in America. And
hmm.
the Human Rights Act, they couldn't get anywhere with people with who stood under them, so they had to create something, like you said, what they can then manipulate and interpret in any way they wanted. So hence came the Human Rights Act. So then anybody who stood under that, because it was their creation, they can contravene it and say, well, we don't see it that way. They can't do that with you. You know, you're born, God born,
Yeah, your
unalienable, inalienable
inalienable
rights.
rights. Yeah, it's your sovereignty because with sovereignty comes
Yeah,
inalienable rights. You have what you call life. You have the spark of creation within you. So therefore, it cannot
yeah,
nothing can be done to harm you. Be just for the simple fact of wanting to live and be happy.
yeah,
That's most of what our inalienable are. They are just a set
yeah,
of rules that allow us to live our life and be happy. Basically, in a nutshell, um, your inalienable rights means you can do whatever you damn well want as long as you're not causing a harm, loss, or you do not commit an injury, or you do not deceive
yeah,
anybody. So as
yeah,
long as like the only person you're hurting is yourself, nobody can actually have a go at you, and you have the right to do it because you're not harming anyone. Because it's like people don't realise this, but to be a crime, there needs to be a victim. Okay, and a corporation is not a victim because it's a
exactly.
fiction. It's a fiction.
Yeah,
So when you go under the Human Rights Act, you actually go under Human Rights Act, and in most courts they do it anyway. You go under your legal fiction. That's not you. That's why
yeah,
you can't use your birth certificate as ID because it's not you.
yeah,
It's an
yeah,
indicator that there is a bond and that lot, and there is this corporation set up. And there many people argue over it, but go and research the Crown copyright and the birth certificate and everything, and your
yeah,
driving license comes under the Crown copyright. So we can't use it without getting permission from the Crown to use it. So we don't have permission to use it, so it's fraud. So we commit
yeah,
crimes when using this. So when you're doing the Human Rights Act, you're actually committing a crime because you're committing fraud straight away.
yeah,
You're basically saying, right, well, I agree. Let me put it this way. Let me do an analogy. If you come into my home, there's a set of rules that if you don't want to live by and you don't want to do, you leave. Okay. And now to stay in my home, you have to abide by them. When you go in under the Human Rights Act, it's exactly the same. It's like out in the streets, you can do what you want, but in my home, you can't. So normally in your everyday life, if you went under your neighbour rights, you can do whatever you want. But if you come under the Human Rights Act, there is a massive set of rules that you're going to have to abide by, and if you breach them, then that's it. There's going to be a penalty.
yeah. And
Like
they
I
can
said, without the
interpret, and they can interpret, but something that you might not breach with standing under your inalienable rights, they might say you have breached and interpret different under their Human Rights Act.
Mhm.
And this is why we've always said stop using the Human Rights Act because it's not there for you. It's not
Yeah,
there to benefit you.
like I
Never
said,
will be.
if the Human Rights Act was so sacrament and was so powerful as they try and make it out to you, then I'm not being funny. When everybody that used the Human Rights Act, they'd be successful. You'd be just as successful as the Sadiq Khan when he used the Human Rights Act to get the 9/11 bombers and that lot, like like their rights and stuff like that. You'd have the same sort of rights, and you'd have £500,000 just given to you for a court case to argue something if you had human rights like immigrants do. who are being deported, and yet we give them our money to fight their case to stay here. They don't have to go back to their country, get the money, come back, fight like we do, and have to find the money to argue it. They get given it. So it's a two-tier system. So human rights are decided by the ones that control them, which is the UN, which is everybody knows is to do. They all linked with the World Economic Forum, the One World Government. And there's a One World Government Summit this year. I'm actually going to put out a few videos about this as well.
Yeah.
But
Whereas
this is
undeniable rights, they can't touch you for them. Like Nathan, you've just hit the nail on the head, everything you've said. So as long as you do all that, they've got no rights to contravene or touch you in any way, shape, or form under your inalienable rights. And that is the difference. But the thing is, just like everything else, people have been suckered in and they fell for it. Oh, well, now we've only got human rights. We ain't got inalienable and unalienable rights anymore. Only human rights. No, it's bullshit. Your inalienable rights, again, are your born rights. They cannot take them away.
Exactly. Rather than listen to somebody who works for a corporation that is trying to enslave you and have complete control every aspect of your life, pick up a dictionary and look up the word unalienable, and it'll tell you quite clearly that it cannot be alien. And I'll explain this. Me and Gary keep saying unalienable and inalienable. The English spelling is unalienable, but when America took on borrowed our constitution and codified their constitution, they took on the same concepts, but it's the spelling they use inalienable, not unalienable, because unalienable is Old English, whereas they use more of the newer grammar for their inalienable. But they mean exactly the same thing. It's just they're spelt differently due to when they was actually created and written down and to when they was enacted. But you got to remember, most of our laws have been around for about 4,000 years at least. A couple of thousand. I mean, we've been doing the constitution's being built up over last 1,000 or so years. And this is the difference when people say, but we don't have a constitution, we don't have common law. We do actually, but the whole point is we have to uphold our laws. So at the moment, what we've done is we've all been very lazy and we've allowed the government to basically do the nanny state like they've always wanted. And we've gone, well, I don't need to do this because someone else will do it for me. And what you don't realise is in doing that, you've allowed them to basically say, well, this person doesn't want their rights. They want me to act in whatever way I see fit for them. So I'm going to act this way. And they've already agreed to it. So don't have a go when you use a legal route and you get screwed over. And there is some of us that use a lawful route. I mean, there's many people that are actually blurring legal and lawful. And I don't think they realise that that's probably going to come to bite them in the backside in the future.
100%.
But I mean, this is the thing. It's like, to stand under the constitution, to stand under your unalienable rights, and to stand against this, like our veterans did, and all the people in World War II, World War One, everybody's fought for our freedoms. 1215, the Glorious Revolution, the Peasants' Revolt. I could name actually quite a few, actually, because we've actually spilt more blood than pretty much any other country to try and get rights for people and to make sure that the powers that be don't treat us like a piece of crap. Literally, it's been paid with by our blood. So all your ancestors' blood is what's paid so you can sit there and you've enjoyed these unalienable rights, because you've got to remember, you've been allowed to have freedom of speech and do all these things that lot before 1998. Okay, because that's when we had the Human Rights Declaration. So if you've been allowed to have freedom of speech, so you have the right to offend somebody, and they have no right to sort of anything, because you can offend them, but that's your right to do so. They don't have the right within law to act upon that, and you don't have a right in law to act upon opinion. But we've been having our rights before 1998. So any of us that are old enough to, I've lived through the 70s and 80s at least, you'll know that. Yep, before human rights, we had rights, and they were still had to be upheld. But what we've done is they've gone, look at this shiny piece of paper, look at this shiny new thing, and they've distracted you with this. And you've actually, and this is what they will do in court. They're going to say, well, you've foregone your rights. You've basically said you don't want them rights. You want to go under these, and you've agreed to this contract because you are. If you go under human rights, you're agreeing to a contract. It's a legally binding contract, and as Gary says, they can pick and choose when they want to uphold that or not. And this is the thing: it's their laws; they uphold them. We don't uphold the Human Rights Act because they do, because it's their laws. Where we
Yeah.
haven't upheld our laws, we've basically been tricked to allow the legal system to trick us to think that common law doesn't exist. I mean, it's like the other day. So when I was in the at the demo in Dover. So I'm not going to name any names, but someone stood there and said that they spoke to someone who works in law, and common law has been abolished. It's like, all right, well, could you explain to me how murder is still uh, contrary to
Mm.
common law? How assault is still contrary to common law, please? And it's like that. It's not until you talk to people that they realise. Understand that most of these people. So if you're talking to a solicitor or a barrister, they are employed by the court. They're not employed by you. They're employed, but they work for the court. They don't work for you. The court lends you these people, allows these people to solicitate and lend you their cells to act for the within the court system um, on your behalf. It's not even for you anymore, and that is determined if people know about it. If you look at the way the barristers, um, for instance, when they cross-examine and stuff like that, they no longer and haven't done for quite a long time. They no longer act as though they are the person; they act for the person. So that if, like Gary, you'll know this. You recently dealt with a solicitor.
Yeah.
Do you take instructions from a solicitor or do you instruct a solicitor?
No, you instruct them. If
Hmm.
if if they if you take extra instructions from them, what's the point?
Yeah.
There's no point, is there? You
Well,
pay your money, so you paying the money just like everywhere else. So when you go to the solicitor, say you can have the right to say, right, there's my statement. This is what went on. That's exactly how I want you to present it.
hmm,
Now I'm paying. That's exactly how I want it presented. If I lose, I lose, but I want to go down my way,
hmm.
and they have to act the way you want,
Exactly. They can't then
or
go and just dismiss
they
you.
don't take the case.
Exactly. It's
But if
their
they're going to
choice.
take
Same
the
as yours.
case, they have to do exact. They have to act on your instructions, like my
Hmm.
solicitor did when I was in Russia with the house. When I went to court against my tenant, and I said I want it doing exactly like this. Yeah, but I said no. This is common law. I'm telling you, this is contravening my unalienable rights. He's done this. He's done that. I want it doing exactly like this.
It's not
And it
just
was
that. I'm not
in
being funny.
court
Hmm.
20 minutes.
Yep. To the point where Gary's actually had what you call an honest solicitor because she's only actually charged him for the 15 minutes he took in court. So he hasn't been spending 4 years paying a solicitor £300 an hour to write a letter. He basically went, right, this is what you've got to do. This is what I want done. This is where I want it done. Go and get it done. I'm paying you to do a service. So she went and done it. And actually, she was a bit like Gary said. First of all, she was like, no, 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 no. And then she actually went and done a bit of research herself. And was she or was she not more than happy to go
Yeah,
ahead to the point where the tenant's barrister tried deferring the case and getting it adjourned like they
yeah,
normally do? It's like, we're going to make a lot of money out of this. So if we just keep adjourning it, they'll keep paying. His solicitor, I think his solicitor knew that if she'd done that or allowed that, Gary would act against her. But she did not allow the harm or the loss to carry on, and she went and done it. And it took 50. It took what most landlords take 4 years and about 30 to 40 grand at least to do through the legal system. Gary used common law and his rights, and it got done in 15 to 20 minutes in court.
yeah,
So now tell me common law does is when Gary's literally, it's like we've done it in multiple areas: family court, Crown
yeah,
Court, Magistrates Court, High Court of Appeal. We've been acting in all them courts, and at no point is anything we said been rebutted in any court cases. In fact, actually,
no,
I'm the only one I know to actually have the Bill of Rights and the Magna Carta given its own little section on a court order written by a judge. And at no point did that judge rebut anything I stated about Article 61, the
no,
Magna Carta, or anything. To the point where, in that case, I actually pulled up the barrister because the barrister tried referring to a constitutional statute rather than a constitutional law. So I had to pull the barrister up and say, you should know better than that. If you don't, it's because you're legally trained, not lawfully trained, and there's something wrong with you. You're not fit for purpose. And the judge could not defer what I said because I was referring to a constitutional law. The barrister doesn't get to
yeah,
speak on my behalf and convince the judge that I'm talking about a constitutional statute that has less power. No,
yeah,
sorry. I know what I'm talking about. I say what it is. I say what I mean. I mean what I say.
exactly. But
To
this
the
is what
point where,
people.
to the point where, in both of the cases involved in that, The judge refused to do a written ruling. The judge actually done what you call a verbal ruling, which it means there is no actual ruling. The judge knew that if she'd done a written ruling, then she loses her job and she goes to prison because I'd have her, because they can't act against me in the way they did. They didn't get my consent. I mean, the judge actually had to. The judge, before, even though she'd done a ruling, the judge had to hand it to me and say, right, well, you now need to make a statement. I need to know whether you agree with my ruling. I spoke to a lot of barristers and solicitors, and a lot of them said, I've never had that, never been asked to do that. Once a judge makes a ruling, that's it. I've never known somebody who's been accused of saying, or who's fighting a case or things like that, to sort of say, right, well, do you agree with what I've done? It's like, no, I don't actually. I don't consent, and I do not understand the acts and statutes. I do not do this. I mean, it's like you have to word it, and unless you word it properly and you do word it, they will take it as you're just saying. It's called tacit consent. It's because you didn't say no, you're agreeing to it. So they're just going to take it as written until you say no or do something. You actually have to act.
Yeah.
This is why we actually
So,
have acts and statutes, because the act is actually having to act. It's an action. It's all there in the wording.
and this is why, but basically now, this is why it's so important that we do, every single man and woman, if you love your children, you have to do for them, because it's them that's going to suffer. Because
Yeah.
majority of us who've got children, like you, Nathan, you ain't going to be around forever. It's not like you're a child at this moment in time. You've lived half your life. So basically, you ain't got to suffer like the children that are being born now. They're going to be
No.
born in, and eventually they're going to be born into this slavery. They ain't even going to know what freedom was. And
Well, I'm not being funny.
Is that a legacy that people want to leave? Because it's not a legacy I want to leave.
Well, technically speaking, anybody over the age of 35 should understand the fact of it's like kids can't do anything what we used to do how to do when we was kids. It's like you try and go and build a den or build a fire somewhere or do the little things in the woods, things out. You're going to land up with the kids brought over other pieces out. There is no freedom, like I said, and
Yeah,
this is why me and Gary we attack people. We don't attack people, but we attack the Human Rights Act, and we constantly try and advise people to not go with the Human Rights Act, because what you don't realise is if you go under the Constitution, common law, and your unalienable rights, you have what you call bodily autonomy. Okay,
yeah,
what actually it means that you have the rights over your body, nobody else does. But if you go
yeah,
under the Human Rights Act and you keep doing that, you're agreeing to have no rights, or you're agreeing
yeah,
to agree to rights that someone can take away from you. So if you go under inalienable rights of the Constitution, no, they cannot jab our children. No, they cannot jab us. No, they cannot do what they're doing because it's against the law. But if you legally agree to it, then there's an argument there. I mean, technically speaking, under our laws, nobody can harm you even with your consent. You can't actually consent to be harmed. So
no.
you can't consent for someone to stick an noxious poison into you or into a minor, for instance. And that's what I fight most with, because it's administering noxious poisons. It is. It's actually it's kind of attempted murder in a way.
But when you're going under the Human Rights Act, you're basically transferring your rights over to them. So they, like you've said earlier, they make the decisions for you then, not you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's what
You're
you've got to
give.
stop doing, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, Dennis. Nice to see you. Dennis Morgan's in from the British Resistance Group.
Okay. I can't see nothing, see now. I've only got this. I ain't
Well,
got no
if you're
screenshots.
if you're in the studio, if you click on comments on your right, you'll see what's coming up on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, I can see him now. Brilliant. But I
Okay.
can't see you now.
Um,
But then
oh,
I can't see you.
you don't have to see me. You know what I look like. We've been friends for like how many years now?
No, but I mean, I can't
15
see you
years.
to see when you. I can't see you to see when you stop talking.
See, it doesn't seem to have
So,
much lag on your end. But switch between the two. Just flick.
yeah, I'll have
Go
to.
old
Yeah,
school. You have to finger you just to keep up. But yeah, that's British Constitution Group. That's some of the ones that we've been working with
yeah,
recently, who are all going under 61. Temmie's been working with them. Um, got very high hopes for that group because they've got a number of people in there that are very staunch and they really want to act. And this is a difference, like the British Resistance Group. If anybody wants to, please take a look at it, please, and us, CMW, and all the other
Yeah,
groups, because like I said, you can still be a member of CMW and be a member of your own group. It doesn't matter
yeah,
because all CMW is there for is it's educational. We're here to
yeah,
basically teach you about unalienable rights, teach you about the Constitution, teach you about common law, so then you can go and do it and you can enact it because it's really not that difficult. And this is a difference. A lot of law books that people read and stuff like that, and a lot of things that people put out sound really complicated because that's why it's been done like that. So your education was subpar. It's subpar on purpose, so that you're not of a standard that you'll understand the wording and the grammar. It's done on purpose. That's why it's only technically speaking grammar schools and above that's taught certain grammar. Is to trick you, so you believe that
yeah.
the understanding or be able to comprehend what's being written down in front of you or you're reading is beyond you. So what you do is you defer what your duty to somebody else. So basically, you're kind of, and this is what I keep trying to explain. It's like it's our duty when you use a barrister assist or anything like that. That's why you become a ward of the court because technically speaking, you're meant to deal with your own situations. So it's like me. So I represent myself in court. I've represented other people. I'm being asked to represent other people, but at the moment, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have enough time with the cases I've got, which is a pity because a few of them I'd really like to grab hold of actually and sort of like run with a few things because they need to be stopped. Um, but this is the thing: if you allow somebody else to do it on your behalf, then you're not upholding your laws. You're not doing your duty. So therefore, it's dereliction of duty. You got to think of it. If a police constable doesn't do his duty, you want that constable to be penalised and punished. So understand this: if you don't uphold the laws, I mean our laws, not Parliament's, not the UN's, not the EU's, and not the WF, unless we uphold our laws that refer to our communities, then we're actually derelicting our own duty. So we are just as bad as the police who derelict their duty. So stop thinking that it's not the same. It is. It's like the reason why Parliament gets to do what they've done is because, technically speaking, the only person that's actually the only relevant man, should I say, or woman, but I've never known it to be a woman. I've only ever known a man. Is the remembrancer. That's the only man that ever steps in foot into Parliament that's there to be represented in a way, and he represents the City of London. We don't get
It's
represented because
the
you vote.
bankers.
We don't tend to get represented because you vote in your legal fiction. So when you register to vote, you're actually using all the uppercase lettering. So that is a corporation. That is your legal fiction. And I'll argue as many people as they like. I'll go through the Crown copyright and I'll show you that it is a fact. I don't care what some judge said in Canada, because they used the Westminster Statute to overrule a lot of it. I'm going to tell you what it blatantly says on all the websites. The Crown copyright says, and it's a legal fiction. It is a fiction. It's a corporation. And we are meant to be the beneficiaries of this. So a corporation is set up so they can manage our estates under the SVKB Trust. And what happens is they're meant to manage our estates and we're meant to benefit from that. But we're not benefiting because we're technically committing a crime. Like I said, we're committing fraud. We are trying to be, we're acting as something that we're not. So when you vote, you're voting in the name that's all uppercase. So that's your legal fiction. So that's not you. So when you cast your vote, it's not even you voting. So please stop wondering why that when you vote time and time again that nothing ever gets done is because you're a fiction. You're voting as a fiction. Can a fiction vote? No, you can't. So your vote
It's a
doesn't
dead
matter.
entity.
Yeah, you mean exactly? You're a dead entity. You're a fiction. You do not matter. It's not relevant. So understand the situation you're putting yourself in because they've tricked us. And this is what a lot of people. It's like a lot of police, a lot of armed forces, a lot of vets, a lot of people, just in general, us as people are going to have to start to understand that our pride is going to be very, very dented when you find out the truth. Mine was, Gary's was. I'm sure many others have that know a lot of the truth. It is because you sit there and think it's like they managed to trick me, and it's so simple how they tricked me. And this is why a lot of people are ignoring it because you don't want to admit that you can be tricked because you seem to think you're cleverer than you are. And this is
We've
the
all
whole
been
point. And
there.
that's exactly it is, but that's exactly what they use against you. You're not as clever as you think you are because you're only as clever as they've allowed you to be taught. Unless you are, I mean, I'm technically an autodidact. I left school at 15 and I've been doing my own education since. They tried redoing my curriculum 3 times while I was at school, and it was never to a standard which was thingy. Uh, so I landed up just leaving and going to college for a little bit and then doing my own education. I'm an autodidact. I learn myself. I haven't learned what someone's told me to regurgitate. I've learned the true stuff. And this is what we all need to do. Do your own thing. Stop relying on other people to tell you stuff. You need to start reading. You need to start researching, because until you read it for yourself, you don't know. I mean, there's believing something and knowing something. Okay, I had this discussion recently, fairly philosophical, but it's me. Okay, to believe in something is to not know something, but you believe something. So it's like it's possible. You think it's possible. Okay, that's a belief. To know something is to know that it's a fact. So it is a fact, therefore you know. It's like you know your parents because they are a physical fact, but you believe in God because you can't, I mean, you believe in it because you trust in something and you think that's the difference in belief and thing. It's like you've got to understand this, and this is where the wording is key. This is why I keep saying to people, get yourself an Oxford Dictionary of Law, get yourself an Oxford English Dictionary, and start looking up the words that they're using, because they are laughing at you. It's like if you think that using the Greek alphabet for um, the variants of COVID isn't literally spitting in your face. You've got another thing coming, because most of them have Greek tragedy connected in its literature. Like Omicron is technically to, if I remember correctly from reading, Omicron is connected to a Greek tragedy where it's technically about infertility. So they're actually laughing at us, but they're using Greek literature that we don't read because we don't read this in our pastime. We don't read it at school that they do. So they know it, we don't, and they're using it to humiliate us and to laugh at us. But it's like it's imagine telling a joke, but to someone who doesn't get it. In fact, actually, it's like a foreigner coming to this country, and because they can't understand English, we can take the mickey out of them, and they can't understand. So they don't know that we're being obtuse. They don't know that we're being horrible because they don't understand our language. That's exactly what they're doing. We don't understand their language because we never get taught it. We don't bother to learn it. So they turn it on us, and we get tricked because we have what you call an ego, and an ego allows you to believe that you cannot be tricked so easily because you're too intelligent. But we was tricked very easily, because you've got to understand it's done through generations. Our grandparents are lied to, so therefore our grandparents then end up lying to our parents, and then because our parents is lied to, our parents lied to us, and it's an ongoing thing. It's perpetual. This will be in perpetuity until it's changed. The exact same as the Magna Carta. Until the people decide that we no longer want our inalienable rights and our constitution and all these laws and everything that protects us from the crown and parliament. If we don't want these no more, then we can have a referendum and we can get rid of them. But until then, they're still there. And this is what people need to understand. And this is why we undergo diffidatio, because it's the only way. Because why everybody's sitting on the fence. I mean, we've got people in CMW that still haven't done 61 because they've been in two minds about it. Because a lot of people say the same thing. It's like, well, I was waiting for the barons to act. It's like, well, the barons have acted. It's our turn now. So go into Article 61. But this is the whole thing. It's about who your loyalty lies with. So who are you backing? As I said, are you backing Parliament or are you backing the barons? The barons want to stop Parliament for giving our country away, selling our sovereignty away, basically stopping the Queen from being able to do certain bits, and allowing Parliament to take full control. Because by the way, it's being part of the EU that actually makes the Parliament then believe that they have parliamentary sovereignty. Okay, it's the EU and going into the ECA that done that, because it's sovereign under their constitution. They're not sovereign. I mean, it's like, for instance, if anybody reads Housewoods, Housewoods and a lot of the courts now, they rely a lot on A.V. Dicey. Now, yes, I've read his later stuff and I've read his earlier stuff for my sins. Yes, I've read it. But A.V. Dicey in his early career basically had the impression, because this is what his teachings was taught to him, that Parliament was sovereign. But when he got to my age, sort of middle age sort of thing, that's when he really started to have a bit of life behind him, and he started to do a bit more research. He understood that without the people, you can't have Parliament. So how can Parliament be sovereign without the people? So you have to have sovereign people for Parliament to have any sovereignty, and it's us that lend our sovereignty to Parliament, the same as the Queen. Okay, in the coronation oath, there's a little clause, and it's often skirted over, and a lot of it's kind of a lot of people think it's ritual, but it's not. It actually says in the coronation oath that we can deny somebody the crown. So, for instance, if Prince Charles or Prince William or Prince Harry want to take the crown, we can say we don't want you as our monarchy, and they can't be it because we are sovereign. What happens is it's a symbiotic relationship. The the Queen is sovereign due to the office she holds of monarchy. Okay, but that comes through a symbiotic relationship. It's a two-way thing. We all have sovereignty. Without lending our sovereignty to her to act on our behalf, she can't be the overall sovereign, the overall authority. I
If
mean, I don't like
Parliament was sovereign, if Parliament was actually sovereign, they'd be like the EU.
yeah.
If they were sovereign, they wouldn't need the people. They wouldn't need elections. They'd just work it out amongst themselves and argue amongst themselves and vote amongst themselves who was going to be
Hmm.
sacked and who wasn't. They wouldn't need the people to have a vote every 4 years to, like you said, lend them their sovereignty to do things in their name. If they was already sovereign, they wouldn't need us.
Hmm. Well, this is the thing. This is another thing as well. By proxy, because we keep voting in our legal fiction, we are allowing it that Parliament is sovereign. Because technically
Yeah,
speaking, because of most of the MPs, they have a trust. They not only have to say CKV trust, but they set that aside with their own personal trust, and that then puts them into a different jurisdiction. So um, where we're doing it in our legal fiction, they often don't actually do it in their actual lawful name. So technically speaking, you could argue that the only people alive in the kingdom are those standing in Parliament and that in Buckingham Palace.
yeah,
All the rest of us, technically speaking, because we're agreeing to be known as dead entities, a fiction, we don't exist. And it's as easy as that. It is really that simple. And I know a lot of people like to use all the big words and stuff like that, but it's like, yes, I can read and understand it all, but it really is that simple. Because
yeah.
we don't exist when we're using us, we're putting ourselves as a fiction. It's a fiction. It's fictitious. It does not exist. It's not true. So there is no populace. There is no vote.
Yeah. You're
So
playing a
we can't.
character.
Yeah, exactly. So our sovereignty is not used within that. So they can claim, well, the people don't want their sovereignty. They're not acting under as sovereign. So we're the only sovereigns acting. So therefore, as we are Parliament and only Parliament exists, we are sovereign. It is that simple. It is really, really simple. But a lot of people are tricked to believe that this is so complicated that you have to have a barrister that has gone to law school for 10 years to get a law degree that doesn't actually allow him to practice law. He then has to go to a bar exam and do a legal exam, which the Bar Association have said as well. Since 1953, they changed the bar exam to a legal exam. So not only and the education with it as well. So that when you say, "Oh, I've got a law degree," you're not educated in law, you're legally trained, and there's a massive
Legalese.
difference. Yeah, there's a massive difference. You're legally trained, not lawfully educated. This is why, and I've got people that have been witnessed there in court. Things like this is why barristers have a bit of a problem and a hard time with me because I'm lawfully educated. And I can point out where they're actually wrong and they don't know the fact that they should not be practicing legalese in the court on a daily basis because it's the legal definition of legalese is the undoing of law. So these barristers and solicitors are undoing law in your name. That's why Gary was so insistent. It's like, no, we're doing it with common law. We're doing it this way, and I'm not doing it that way because otherwise
Yeah,
it's aiding and abetting.
yeah.
So what happened is Gary instructed the solicitor and said, no, I'm going to remain within the law. Thank you very much. So I'm doing this, and she
Yeah.
had to do it.
And the other thing you've got to remember, ladies and gentlemen, and we've had this said people the other day, there's no such thing as a common law barrister or a common law solicitor. There's no
or a
such
common
thing.
or a common law constable. Okay, a constable swears his oath to common law because we are a common law jurisdiction, we are a common law country, so everything's common law. Okay, unless you
Yeah,
make the choice to ignore it. Okay, so there's no such thing as common law constables, no such thing as common law solicitor, common law barrister. Okay, um,
no,
as I said, they're meant to be lawfully educated, but they're legally trained, so you can argue things. But ignorance is no defence in the law, so use that against them.
no.
They have, I mean, the fact that they're ignorant, as educated as they are, and they're still ignorant, it's their own fault. It's not our fault.
Yeah,
Barristers don't like you doing that, by the way. They don't like you pointing out they're ignorant and using the fact of like the bar association actually states on their own website that the legal it was changed to a legal exam, not a lawful exam. They don't like you point out the fact you may have a law degree, but does that law degree allow you to practice law? No, it doesn't, because it's not
No.
a lawful education. I've been allowed by judges to advocate for people, and it's usually done with the basis. And the reason why I do it, I'm not a Mackenzie friend because I don't do that. I don't commit fraud and all that lot and treason and all that crap. And I don't work for the court system, and I do not allow the court system to tell me how I'm going to do something. I will act within the law, and I'll do the best defence. I will not cajole someone's defence because the court would prefer if I did it this way. No, okay. An advocate in the court rules, it states quite clearly, yes, I'm this swotty, I've actually gone into this and argued this with judges. In the court rules, in the rules of engagement of when you go to a court, in nowhere does it state an advocate has to be a solicitor or a barrister.
No.
An advocate, and if you go to the proper legal definition, advocate is basically someone that acts or speaks on someone's behalf, and that's it. It's been blurred, the fact that the only person that can speak on your behalf is a solicitor or barrister. No, it's not. If you feel that I may know the law a bit better than you, and I may do a better job of defending you and speaking on your behalf, you're allowed me to speak for you, because you may make a mistake that may get you a conviction, whereas I won't make that mistake. You're allowed that because you're allowed the best defence possible. And this is what courts don't like, and this is what barristers don't like you understanding, because once you understand that, they then are putting themselves in the position where they are openly acknowledging and openly showing the fact that they're committing what you call personage and barratry. Okay,
Yeah.
they are
And
both crimes.
yeah, and they may not be needed in the future.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not being funny. It's like, take the Scotland Yard case that went all over London in magistrates, Hendon, the whole lot. They was trying to wear me down by keep knocking me backwards, forwards, until eventually we managed to actually have the hearing. And the judge in that case, and Terry was a witness that, the judge in that case actually praised CMW and me for the fact that I bothered to know the law and know my rights and be able to act in the way I did. Praise my paperwork and everything I did, because I'd done it completely in the right way. He said, no, well done to Constitution, well wide. If they are going to produce people that can come here and do this, then all power to them. I can't see that as a bad thing, because he understood that I know that it's personage and barratry what they're committing on the other side as well as me. So he backed the fact that, yeah, we should be doing this. The law, right? I mean, we all know what's right and wrong. It's not hard to tell if something's right or if something feels wrong. It's not. It's not hard to tell that. But you're tricked to believe that there's this process you have to go on that's really tricky. It's not. It's not.
But it makes their job easy, Nathan, doesn't it? It makes the judge's life much easier if you know what you're talking about, because
Yeah.
then he hasn't got to keep pointing in the direction. He, like a judge, believe it or not, like somebody who knows what they're talking about, because you go in blah blah blah. Yes, that's correct, and it makes his job much easier, because it's not their job to tell you, oh, you've said the wrong thing there. It's up to you to know.
Yes. And this is the thing, you're meant to know the laws. You're not meant to know the legalese and the legal side of it and that lot. And I'm telling you now, there is absolutely no way you're going to be able to learn acts and statutes to the point where you should be able to defend, because it's not like that.
No.
There is so many that is ridiculous. And most of them are either, I mean, I had this pulled up against a judge, and like I said, the judge refused to do a written ruling in this case. She done a verbal ruling, which means she made no official ruling. So technically speaking, the case is kind of in limbo. I'm going through the appeal and that, but I had this with a judge because it's kind of um, where you've got acts and statutes. They do actually need your consent. That's why the judge had to ask me, because she was using what she used. She stated was a common law ruling. Okay. Now, a common law ruling based on a parliamentary statute is not common law, because Parliament is below. They can legislate and they can do all that, but they can't create common law and they can't create constitutional law. Only we can do
No.
that, like a judge. I mean, people go, oh, but case law. Okay, well, the case law is written. It's written in for the judge, yes, but it's the jury that actually creates case law. It's the jury that creates common law. Okay, that's law. We
Precedents.
we are the law. That, yeah, well, you can create a precedent, be a thing, but it's the jury
Yeah.
that actually establishes the law, because it's what the
Yeah.
people in the community will accept and won't accept. That's the laws. And then you've got the legalities, which what Parliament decides is going to be rules they think you should live by. There's a massive difference, massive difference. Okay, so when a judge cannot, right? Houseby's Laws of England. Okay, we're going to put the free PDFs and that up in CMW and a few other groups and that lot, and I'm going to pass it on to a few other groups, put in their groups, so people can read this. Houseby's Laws of England, which is what the judges, technically speaking, have to go by. It states quite clearly that a judge, the only time you can be penalised, so that you can have a penalty or you can have some sort of punishment, is when a jury of your peers decide that you broke the law and you need to be punished. A judge's arbitrary opinion they can't punish you on their own, and this is where the subversion happens. This is where the legalese and the legal bit gets into it, because people consent to it. Because you don't contest it, because you don't do anything. This is why I say to people, it's like people wonder why I've always got so many appeals going. It's because I contest everything and I go as far as I can. It's like in one of my cases, I submitted in the front, and all the way through the case, I said, this is a case where the judge has done a verbal ruling, not a written ruling. It's been said all along, because the other side have said we have to be mindful because there is grounds for a judicial review, because I made sure that I had grounds for a lot of things when I first started. It's like my first thing with a court, because I'm still learning certain bits and things like that a lot, but I mean, you can do things outside of court. There's a few tricks, but I don't use the legal tricks, I use the lawful thing. So for me to be lawful means that I intend to do everything up front and forthright. I'm not going to try some little trick or anything like that. But in what the judge, look at what the judge tried doing to me. She tried basically using a ruling which basically allows civil courts now, so family court and any civil matter, it allows them to have the presumption of guilt. A lot of people don't think this is true, thing, but they do. In criminal court, different, innocent till proven guilty, but in civil court, it's actually presumption of guilt is there before the presumption of innocence. Because if basically in civil court, if something is possible, it's likely. So they will just say, right, guilty then, until you can prove that it's less than likely. So it's the opposite of actually the criminal court and being innocent. It's the thing. It's like it's kind of impossible to prove your innocence because it could have possibly happened. We don't know. So it's kind of the opposite. Same as like with guilt. The whole reason why it's innocent till proven guilty is because until you can't just say, oh, someone did this, and expect that person to be punished. You've got to prove they did it. Once you prove they did it, then it's like it's in no doubt. There is no doubt that person breached. They've done a trespass, therefore they get punished. And the opposite is in civil court. It's a case of it's nigh on impossible to prove your innocence. And this is what people are allowing because they don't uphold our laws. And this is why I argued with the judge, and this is why I think the judge is see, because he understands.
Your mic's gone again. Still not working.
Now?
Yeah.
I said it's unless you didn't read the stuff I put to the court, then there's no reason for her not to understand it. But it's like I know that Parliament can't create common law. Yeah. And I know that you can't use a statute that Parliament's created to then force a jury to then uphold that under common law. You can't do that. Law doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. So like I said, so when she come to me and said, well, here's a statute, a parliamentary statute, that's a common law, and it's been ruled by a judge that this is so that's a common law ruling. And when I explained to her, it's like, we're talking about a judge who I argued, and I had to literally say, would you like me to submit the documents that show that you had legal training, not lawful training? Because she argues, oh, I'm lawfully trained, thank you very much. So I said, no, you're not, you're legally trained. And I actually went through with her and said, at the bar station, but she actually said, this parliamentary statute was common law. I went, no, it's not. And it's like, I know a little bit about case law, okay? So it didn't take me long. It took me all of about 30 seconds to remind her the fact of, well, if you know your case law, you'd know that that's actually contrary, because the presumption of guilt is actually contrary to about 211 years of case law stating presumption of innocence over guilt. Explain, please, Your Honour. She just went red face. It's kind of, it's like, oh, and it's like, yeah, I've just caught you out committing fraud, and this is the thing. Fraud Act is still based in common law because it's deception. She's in a position of trust, and she's basically used that position to deceive me.
Abuse of trust.
It is. Yeah. It's abuse of trust. It's a trespass. So under tort law, and this is what.
Your mic's gone again.
Back.
Yeah.
Well, this is what I keep trying to explain to people. It's like common law proves a trespass, whereas tort law and a couple other bits, that's what prosecutes a trespass. That's why often it's like you do it, I do it. How many years do we keep referring people to tort law and other bits like that? Because that's how you get redress. Because tort law is taking the crime, whereas common law is just basically there is rights you have that cannot be breached, and if those are breached, then it becomes a crime, and you prove that within tort law. I mean, that's why murder is contrary to common law, because the common laws of land is you don't go around killing people. And this is the thing people got to understand. It's like, but it's the tort law that actually underpins common law that actually gets that prosecuted.
Yeah. But yes, we better leave it there now. It's been on ages, but it's been enjoyable, and people should have got something from it. But
So
we'll
basically,
reiterate again before we go. Please, we implore you all to think about this seriously. You look at children.
stop moving your mic.
You must go into Article 61, Clause 61.
Yeah. Because you have this choice. We have free will, so you have this choice. Okay, when people say, "Why do we need to go to Article 61?" Well, the Queen has actually, by royal command, so the Queen has commanded that you do this. You uphold your constitutional duty. So that's one thing. So anybody who's been in the army or anything like that, and you say Queen and country, the Queen has actually ordered you to do this. So are you going to disobey the Queen or are you going to obey her? So pick your side you want to be on, really.
And she's
same
done
as
that
us.
by not rebutting.
Exactly. It's a personal secretary. Yep, a personal secretary basically wrote back and went, "No, you do what you have to do." So basically, that shows in a way that backs up the whole kind of thing. She's been captured. It's one of them things. She's been falsely imprisoned, probably within her own mind by the deception of others. Like I said, but the reason why we go into Article 61 because we don't have a choice. Because if we don't go into Article 61, we're breaking the law. We're actually aiding and abetting the crimes, not fixing these crimes. Okay, so that's one reason why you should be doing 61. Because unless you actually are in Article 61, you're a criminal and you're helping them do all this to us. So you're helping them jab us. You're helping them do all the rest of it. You're helping them do all of it because you're doing nothing to stop them. Okay, so that is one reason.
And ignorance is no excuse.
Yeah, ignorance. Yeah, ignorance under law. Ignorance is no excuse in law. So that's why a lot of people get convicted when they say, "But I didn't know," so it doesn't matter. Ignorance is no excuse. You should have bothered to find out before you let anything happen. So ignorance is no excuse, and you will get punished for it. So that's why we go into Article 61 because we don't actually have a choice. Well, we do have a choice. You either back the criminals or you back the people trying to stop the tyranny and the treason and all the crimes. So you've got to pick a side. It's going to be either side of a fence. There's no sitting on. Because if you're sitting on the fence, it's going to be taken as you're that side of the property line, so therefore you're with the criminals, because it's tacit consent. Okay, so if you're not in 61, you're actually helping the criminals. You're actually helping them do this to us. So well done, all those that refuse to go into 61. You're actually helping them do this to us.
You're enslaving your children. You're letting your children down, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and wait until you see what happens when the government decide to flip the page and they turn it around to you and say, "Well, you actually helped us do this to your children. You're not fit to parent your children." Imagine when they start doing things like that. And if you think they won't, you've got another thing coming. Have a look at some of the legislation that they've brought out. So basically, that's it. That's why you go into lawful rebellion. That's why you enter into Article 61 because you have one of two choices. You either go along with the crime or you're stopping the crime. There's no grey area. There's no middle road on that one. Pick one side. Pick a side. You're either with all these criminals or you're against them. Okay, got to keep repeating it. Pick a side. Okay. Understand that. How does this happen? Right. How does Article 61 sort out this country? No, Article 61 is not a golden remedy that everyone seems to think that you sign the form and overnight our country will be restored. It doesn't work like that. Article 61 is the start of the process of undoing these crimes. Okay. So what we do is we take away our allegiance to these criminals and we put with people that's going to undo their crimes. Okay. That's what happens under 61. That's why and what happens when we go under 61, and that's the process we're doing it basically. Going into 61 puts you in the lawful standing where you can act against these criminals to try and stop these criminals, i.e. distress and distrain Parliament. You can actually act against these criminals to stop them doing their crimes, and you have the backing of the law in doing so, because you're actus reus, you're physical action, and your mens rea, your mental intent, are stated beforehand, so they're all lawful. Okay, so you intend and you mean to do the right thing, and the Article 61 form declares that. That's why it's a declaration. Okay, so you declare the fact that you intend to be lawful, and you don't intend to commit any more crimes. That's why if you do commit a crime under common law while you're in 61, you have basically committed treason, and you could face life imprisonment. This is why we keep telling everybody, stop listening to idiots who tell you that you could be a common law constable. Stop listening to idiots who seem to think that the public have the authority to just start writing arrest warrants and stuff like that, because we don't. Okay, we don't have the authority to do things like that. If we was going to do it like that, we'd do the militia, because that's what we have a right to. I know people get scared when I mention the word militia, but militia is not what people have made it out to be. The whole reason why the militia has been made to be bad is because it's our lawful right to actually create a militia to stop these crimes being perpetrated upon us. So, and the militia is our version of the Crown's constabulary. Put it that way. Okay.
Because all the militia is when the army and the police become tyrannous, you've got no choice but to do it yourself.
Well, this is where we actually get the military from. It comes from. I mean, militias are an ancient thing. I mean, we get the military from militia. Yeah. I mean, people lawfully being able to basically do an action to stop a crime from happening to the people. Yeah. And this is the thing I keep saying to vets that lot. It's like your constitutional duty actually overrides that of any oath of office. So if you're in the army or you're in the police force, for instance, your duty under the Constitution is actually higher than that of your duty to the oath of office that you've agreed to go under. That's why, for instance, police officers and army can't use Section 3. It's actually higher than their powers of arrest because it's backed up by common law and the Constitution, whereas a constable has he has the lawful right to arrest, but they use a legal system to arrest you. They don't. That's why you get a police officer. You don't get a police constable. Because a police constable can only act under the law of the land. A police constable should never be a political motivator. So they should never be using political statutes or any political narrative to actually interact with the community. Constable, once he leaves the police station, a constable is an independent entity. Okay, they have no authority. Okay, there is technically, like for me, I don't technically use the ranks when I'm talking to constables. I don't care if you class yourself as a superintendent or a sergeant or a constable. To me, you're all just constables because the only rank that matters is with you lot. So unless I'm a constable, their ranks don't matter to me. Okay, they're all constables. Okay, as a man, I don't have anybody that is over me. I only have equals. Okay, I have my peers. So everybody is my peers. So everybody is equal to me. No one is above me. No one is below me. Okay, that's another reason why when we work with groups, we say, no, please keep your group. Just work with us and allow us to help you where we can. And let's do this thing because we're not above anybody. We're not below anybody. So it's one of them. It's a case of we're equal. So we expect to be treated the same way. We treat you as equals. Please treat us. That's what it's like. Dennis is here. It's like with the British resistance movement. That movement, it's like, and this is another thing. It's like we've got a lot more people in our movement than you'll see on the numbers on Facebook, stuff like that. It's just we've been doing this for many, many years, and we've learned a lot of ways to keep a lot of crap out of our groups and a lot of our people safe. But if you take a group like the British Resistance Group, a little bit smaller than CMW, so a lot of people would look at it as inferior, but it's not. It doesn't matter how many members you have. You could have 2 members, and you'll still be just as equal as any group that has 10,000, 30,000. You're just as equal and you're just as relevant as long as you're not breaking the law. And this is what we've got to start like accepting with each other. At the end of the day, it's like it was. Do you know what? It was actually quite interesting. I mean, I'm not being funny. Like I said, there's no way you could have made it, Gary. Even if you tried, you'd have probably killed yourself on the road because of like traveling all that way and that. Like, you wouldn't have been safe. I wouldn't allow you to do it anyway. But it's like when I went to Dover Saturday, I think it's been said there was at least 8 of us that are technically leaders of groups there. So that was 8 groups being represented, and we all discussed. So Dennis says that he had a conversation with me there Saturday for that. I do. So I'm sorry for boring everybody, but I talk about this a lot. But it's like most of the leaders of the groups, like the PTSD camp was there, for instance. Joe, if you ever watch this, hello Joe, thank you for like listening to me, and nice to meet you finally. Um, we had people like Joe from the PTSD camp and stuff like that. We was all talking amongst ourselves and that lot, and we've kind of started to lay the foundations where we've got to try and work with each other, and we're trying to accept and understand that there's not many differences in what we're doing.
No. You find that anyway, Nathan. The majority of people, you are on the same page with 90% of the stuff.
Yeah, this is it. It's just until people actually get to discuss things and actually really understand it, and you actually really lay down. It's like the golden rule. We can all agree that people shouldn't be murdering people. People shouldn't be stealing off people. Things like that. That is the golden rules. Okay, the golden rules are the basic things that mean a society can perform and live lawfully and peacefully. Okay, that's the golden rules. That's why we call them laws. I mean, you've got laws as LAWES, and you've got laws as LAWS. They're not that dissimilar. They are and they aren't. 2 seconds, sorry.
Yeah,
If I can do, Jess, actually, you're correct. And this is a subversion because this is where you get definition. This is why it's unalienable rights in England and inalienable rights in America. Because in the US, a militia actually, the origin of militia is never going to change, okay? But the interpretation that is put on a militia is different in America to it is to here. So you're completely correct. And this is why a lot of people get the wires crossed. It's like a lot of people in the UK seem to go, oh, it's slander. No, there's no such law as slander. There's no such crime as slander in the UK. There's defamation of character. The same as if you go to America, you can mention, oh, it defamed my character, but that's not the crime. He slandered me. He slandered me, which defamed my character. Slander is the crime in America, whereas defamation of the character is the crime over here. I mean, it's not a crime until my character's been defamed. But the act of slander is the act of attempting to do so. Like I said, there's differences. The laws are the same, but there's slight differences, and it's often in wording. But the meaning and the basis is often there. So, Barkin, you are correct, mate. You're very correct. And this happens a lot. I've noticed. It's like a lot of people still keep referring to Black's Law's dictionary. Now, I'm not being funny. I've been doing this a very long time. I think I have Black's Law through 3 to 9 at least. I mean, it's not easy. Like I said, they're very expensive. So, but the reason why I have them is because I do work with people in the USA. I work with people in Australia. I work with different places. I've even worked with discussed some things with people in the Philippines. Some places like America and the Philippines and that they use Black's Law dictionary for their legal definitions. We don't. So that's why I have about 20 different dictionaries. Now, the normal person doesn't need 20 different dictionaries because you're not running a movement that's dealing with worldwide constitutions that differ in certain ways. All you need to understand is you need an Oxford English Dictionary, an Oxford Dictionary of Law, and Housewares. That's pretty much it. And learn how to use them because Housewares are a reference. It's not a book where you read cover to cover. It's a book where you go to reference so you find out what actually is under the law. But as I said, you want to get the older versions because the houses I've got and the ones you'll get now, they've got the EU laws in them. But then again, you can buy them ones, but anything it says about the EU, you just ignore because I've never accepted the EU. I've never been a member of the European Union ever because I've never voted. So I've never been a member of the European Union. They can try and say it, but I've been vehemently against it for my whole life really. But so they can't use that against me. Like I said, this is the thing. It's like if you're on the electoral roll, you are committing a crime. You're committing treason. So remove yourself. They're going to try and kick off in that lot because pretty much this is another reason. Okay, if you undergo Article 61, okay, if enough of us do it, or say the whole country, because it's not technically the whole country, because you can still have criminals and still have people acting lawfully. But if a certain chunk of us go under lawful ban, or if enough of us remove ourselves from the electoral roll, Parliament cannot exist. It has to be Her Majesty has to come and she has to stop it. She has to basically close the doors and say, right, well, legally, lawfully, you can't do anything because nobody's agreed for you to govern them. And this is what you've got to understand. When you vote or you register to vote, you agree to be governed. So you agree to someone to rule over you, basically. Well, it's not meant to be ruling over you. They're meant to govern you. So they're meant to help you within your life. But they've took it further than that, and it's a nanny state. But when you do this, you're giving them their power. So if we take the power away, if everybody stops agreeing for these people to govern us, there is no reason for their jobs. Okay. Now that's how you can, like I said, now you can reset a lot of things with Article 61, Sharia law, the WEF, the jabs and that lot, the vaccination stuff like that. You can change all this. Um, it is it's kind of really simple when people think about it. If you don't give your consent to be governed, they have no legal authority to govern you. So therefore, Parliament can only exist with our consent. So if that's the case, if we stop consenting to the criminals in Parliament, we can then do away with them criminals, and it's going to make it easier for us to install independent MPs and members of Parliament.
Well, the thing
Um,
is as well, what people are going to be careful of is if you don't come off the electoral register, and you stay on there, even if you don't vote, they will still use your vote in your absence.
yeah, because it's tacit agreement. Because you're on the electoral
Yeah,
roll, it means your intention
exactly.
was your intention was I've got onto this register because my intention is to vote. So they can say, well, this person was going to vote, so we'll just put. They didn't do it, but we'll just put their vote with the majority. So it'll go
Yeah,
to whatever because your intention was there. Like I said, it's tacit agreement. 2 seconds.
yeah.
For Freedom for Britain, is this Mr. Simpson that's talking? Who says he met me in Dover on Saturday? If it is, yes, was me, mate. This is the thing, and this is what I think. People want all independence and that lot. So if you want independent MPs, then go into Article 61, get off the electoral roll. Let's do away with the criminals that are actually in Parliament at the moment, and let's start putting people in there that are actually going to act for the people. And that's the quickest route to it. Now, if you think keep voting for the same criminals that are taking away your power, your things, and they've never, I mean, let's face it, and I ask this of every single person that talks to me about politics that keeps going, oh, no, we've got to go political route. Name me one manifesto that's ever been kept to. One, just one, ever in the history of English politics or British politics. Name me one manifesto that has ever been kept to. You can't because none ever has. Okay, and that should show you the corruption of what we're facing, the manifesto. So they get you to vote for them and give your consent based on something that you think they're going to do, but they never uphold it because they don't have to. Because when you gave your consent to it, when you actually vote, you do it in a fiction. So they don't have to. They don't have to do their manifesto because you're a fiction. So they don't have to uphold it for you. You're a fiction. You don't exist. So their duty to you and their liability to you doesn't exist.
It looks well, Dave. I mean, all that time I was in Belarus, I never got kicked off a show once. I'm back home and I've got kicked off.
Yeah, see, I told you. It's the thing. So, like I said, it's like, do you know what? I'm still surprised that I was allowed to even have my green man back because it's literally been about 4 years since I've been allowed to go on anybody's lives.
Yeah,
I just don't get the green man. That's the first time in many years me and you have been on Facebook together. And this is
yeah,
the problem because when me and Gary get together like this and we can sit there with our acquired knowledge, we can sit there and talk you through these things, and we do it try and do it in a way where it's easy to understand or easy to comprehend, should I say, instead of using certain words. By the way, you can use the word understand. It's how you use it for definition to find
yeah,
in which sentence you use it.
yeah,
So you can still use it for what you think it means. Understand as in comprehend. Um, it's just how you use it, the context. But it's like this when me and Gary get together. It's like hopefully many people are understanding now that it's like being on the electoral roll, voting is not going to do no good because the quickest way to
no,
get rid of these lot and do it is to actually come away from that and say, well, I'm not agreeing to this anymore because I'm not going to go along with your crimes. Then they don't have a job no more. But the country does need to be governed, and the barons under Article 61 govern the country in lieu of the crown authorities doing it.
yeah,
Okay, so they take control of all the crown authorities, and they're basically discharging of their constitutional duties under the coronation oath for the crown. They take over all that and they reset it all and they sort out what's crimes and what's not, and all the crimes are done away with, everything's voided. And then once that's happened and everything's back to normal, then by law, as Article 61 states, we then have to give, as long as the crown agrees that they're never going to do this again, we have to give our allegiance back to the crown, and then we can be
yeah,
governed again.
yeah.
No,
But
Dennis, mate, spoiling your ballot means nothing because, like I said, if you're on
no,
the electoral roll, if you even touch that ballot, then you've already agreed to vote. So spoiling your ballot doesn't work. It's a fallacy that most people just don't understand. You shouldn't even be in the game to begin with. If you truly don't
no,
want to back these
get out
criminals,
of
you
it.
won't be voting for them. Get out of it because it doesn't matter whether it's Labour, whether it's Conservative. I'll put it this way: we've had Labour and Conservative piggybacking for a number of years now. Name one thing that the EU has wanted that both Labour and the Tory party have not done for them. Name me one thing. Name me one thing where they've gone against anything that the narrative's thing. They won't because they're all the same. Okay, they are puppets for a higher master. Okay, and this is the thing. We've got to understand this. If we want to be their masters again, then we have to actually take up that position. So we have to withdraw our consent, reset it, make sure it's all acting lawfully. And like I said, that is the quickest route to actually getting a lawful parliament. Removing our consent and saying no, and now we want proper elections, and we need to stipulate that, like they should do, and actually, technically speaking, any crown authority and any crown person is actually bound by the constitution and common law. So they have a duty to know the constitution so they don't breach it. And this is what we should be insisting of any independent. Okay, so for instance, Freedom for Britain, I think he said Saturday that he does stuff with Jada and stuff like that. Now she was talking about going to politics a little while ago. I don't know if she still is, but for her to be a member of Parliament, she's going to have to learn, like me and Gary, she's going to have to learn the Constitution. She's going to have to learn what's constitutionally repugnant, what's not, what she can and what she can't do. Basic rules of engagement. They have rules that they have to work by, and for some reason they've tricked everybody to believe that they're the ones that create the rules, not us. No, we created it. It's our constitution. That's why
But
people died for it.
we've always said, Nathan, like the way we've always, well, the way I've always put it in layman's terms to try and make people understand is politics is dead at this moment in time. You've got to imagine, say you live in the town and the town centre is the New World Order. Then you've got the number 59 bus, which is Conservative, and the number 34 bus, which is Labour. They'll both take you into the town, but they'll take you in a different route.
Yeah,
And
or
that's
if
how I've
it's
always tried to explain it in simple layman's terms. And it's people seem to get it more then because it's not complicated when you explain it like that. But what's he doing now? Where have you gone now?
sorry,
Fart in a bottle. Can't hear you. Still no nothing. You need some new headphones.
I do. Yes, I broke them.
You sound like Norman Collier. For any of the older ones watching, I know who Norman Collier was. Can't hear the words you're saying now. I don't know whether the people can or can't.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, I just want to elaborate on what you said there because it's kind of you've been some of the analogies you've been sort of stated in the conversations we've had off air sort of recently. It sort of made me think of a lot of like better ones that I can use.
Go on
We have
again. Sorry.
one wire on my headset. One
Yeah, that's it. That's how. Now it's gone again.
now.
Yeah,
Am I back?
yeah. Now,
Now.
yes.
Right, where I live, we have a thing called the Thanet. Right, it's the Thanet Loop. Okay. Basically, it's done by Stagecoach, and you get a bus. There's a bus comes to a bus stop every 5 to 8 minutes. Okay, but what you have is like what you just said. If you take Labour and Conservative, what you have is you have it's the same route. It's just you've got a number of buses that go in the opposite directions, so they're constantly circling each other. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's Labour and Conservative, it's the same route they're going. They're just going in a different direction. So the scenery looks different, but you're still going to land up at the same place.
Yeah.
Easy as that. But this
And
is the
that's what
thing. It's
people ain't grasping.
But we, like I said, keep voting and keep going along with certain things like that. And like you mean, like I said, like Andrew said, well, Andrew knows this because like we did this back in the Dragons. Most of us come off the electoral roll because we knew what it means.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. If you're on the electoral roll, you're actually you're consenting to it. They can take your consent. They can pretty much basically sort of say, well, they may not have voted, but they're on the electoral roll, so their intention was to vote. So we're going to do that. We're just going to take their vote as this. That's why it's like the same's in America. This is the thing. A lot of people don't understand this. It's like I was discussing this recently because somebody, I haven't seen it myself personally, but there's say 2,000 mules or so. It's a program that's gone about the electoral fraud and that lot in America. Same things happen in America. It's like you've got people that are like voting that died in like the Civil War.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Why this has all happened is like the thing. It's like, and you've got people that are dead.
Mike's gone again.
You hear me now?
Yeah. No. No.
Because
No.
ridiculous.
Get some new headphones for the next time. I would.
I'm going to. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I can hear you now, yes. Gone
Realise
again.
it's like. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realise it's the same in this country. When people die, often their estate is not actually consoled. So people never come off the electoral roll. Unless you come off the electoral roll, you're still there. So technically speaking, they still take your vote.
But let's leave it there now because your mic's playing up and it's getting late anyway. We've done about 2.5 hours anyway. And I promise, ladies and gentlemen, the next time Nathan will have some decent headphones. Can't hear you.
Sorry, but grand start is pulled. Fix. Oh, I'm just going to get some one. So camera. Me like on my webcam.
Your camera's all right. It's your headphones. Your headphones are shit. I've got to be honest. It sounds like you're doing Morse code.
And so
No, can't hear the word. Just unplug them now for the last 30 seconds and I'll shut up while you talk.
this is the thing. I can't. This is the thing. It's like I have to hold my headphones. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Like I said, I'm having to hold it because a wire is broken. I've taken the casing off my thing. Literally, one wire is broken, so I'm having to hold that wire so it connects. As soon as that moves, it just cuts me out. But no, I will have a better headset or something for next time. I'll sort something out so I don't have to keep mucking about.
Yeah.
That's a nice thought, and it is quite funny because Stephen said about setting up a GoFundMe to get new sound equipment, but we don't do GoFundMes and stuff like that.
No.
But it's like it would be nice, but I'll sort it. I'll sort it. But yeah,
You
we'll
don't
leave
get
it
a
there.
GoFundMe, but you don't do GoFundMes, but you'll probably get about 40 sets of headphones in the post.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. It's just for God's sake. The thing is, it's like, I don't accept gifts and that really. So it's like, it's like I said, it's like Angela, bless her, she's got such a big heart. But it's like I get very thingy about people giving me gifts and little things like that. So it's like Angela, bless her, has found that out herself. I don't know. It's like I said, it's like I just like to do things myself. I don't really take handouts as much as possible and things like that. It's like, and I don't do a lot of what other people do because I don't like people to use it against me.
So,
Right.
but
Can
yeah,
I, right,
it's
before we go, can I just ask Angela, because she keeps saying this on every single thing. Right, Angela, we cannot just set up an English Parliament until we've dealt with the British Parliament and the Act of Union and the Act of Settlement.
yeah,
Okay, so until we actually go under 61 and we actually stop that, because technically speaking, that was treasonous, until we actually sort that all out first. So, because like I said, instead of looking to the secondary, we've got to look to the primary now. And
yeah,
then we've got to look at the primary reasons why this has happened. And then once we do that, yes, we can have an English Parliament back. But technically speaking, you could argue that if we have an English Parliament back, then Scotland, Wales, and Ireland have to have their freestanding parliaments. So we've then got to work out a new Act of Union, because an Act of Union can be between the kingdoms. It doesn't have to be under one kingdom. We just have to all agree that basically we all want to live by the same basic laws, like no killing, stuff like that, and just go with that.
yeah. But like you said, you got to do, but you got to do it by due process. It's got to be done a stage at a time.
Well, this is the thing. It's like the lawful rebellion, the due process is set out by like 1215 Magna Carta, and is set out by the barons. I'm not being funny. I don't understand. I mean, it's a 3-step process. It's your declaration. So your declaration declaring your intentions, which is also your declaration is physical proof that from a certain point in time you intended to act a certain way. So it will be your defence as well later on when it goes to court and they try and overturn what we did. But you've got you've got your affidavit of truth. So you're not only just like declaring your intentions, you're actually stating your intentions, and then you've got your claim of right. So you're after, because it's not been rebutted and you've not been attacked and it's not been proven otherwise, you are claiming your right to do so. And that's the 3 stages. That's the 3 steps in the process. Why people have got 5 and 7-step processes, I have no idea. I have no idea.
Don't need them.
Because I'm not being funny, you can't just make this process up. Like I said, the reason why CMW do things in a certain way is because we do it by the letter of the law. Okay, we don't make stuff up. We don't like romanticize or dramatize things because it sounds different, and we definitely don't do what a lot of people do, where they try and come up with some clever trick because they think they're going to circumnavigate like a 1,000-year-old law. It doesn't work like that.
No.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to undo what they're undoing. So you've got barristers, judges, and that lot at the moment undoing law, and we're trying to put it back together. It's as simple as that. Simple as that.
So basically, yeah, exactly. So we do exactly as it says on the tin. We don't interpret anything and put our own interpretation on it. We do it, like you said, to the letter as it states in article or clause 61, as some people call it. And we do it exactly to the letter of that. We don't say, oh, well, Article 61 says this, but you can do it like this. It don't matter. We'll put our own interpretation on. Never done that and never will.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is another thing. It's like there is no interpretation of these. Like I said, Article 61 is completely separate to all. I mean, because you've got to remember there is clauses. They're all means like it's technically clauses in Magna Carta because it is a treaty. Okay, it's a treaty born of war between the crown and the people. Okay, but unless you're referencing the whole document, because a lot of people get a bit thingy over this, but you can refer to it as Article 61 because you're referring to one of the articles of, in that whole document. So it's just one piece of that document. So you can refer to it as an article, or you can, because it is technically speaking, it is a security clause. So whether you use Article 61 or Clause 61, you're both right on both. So it doesn't matter. You're talking about the same thing. But like I said, we can do this. Rick's just popped in. You're a bit late again, Rick. You're back on that ish watch, aren't you? It's like 12-ish, 1-ish, 2-ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but this
You have
is
to
what I'm
watch
saying.
catch up with.
But me and Gary will be going live again on here and on Facebook say in the next couple of days because we've got a few more things to do. We're just going to try and sort of explain certain bits because a lot of people are still getting confused when a lot of things are fairly simple. It's just like I said, it's like unless you do the research and you learn things, it's easy enough to understand that like you've been deceived because they try and make it sound so complicated because only it's like the law the language of the law society, okay, the law society in our country has its own language, okay, has its own language, so they speak that in court, okay, we don't, okay, and that's what you've got to understand. They have a different language to us and that's what they use. because it's a language of law society. So when they're speaking, you think they're speaking English, but they're actually speaking in legalese terms. They're using the language of the law society. So understand that, and understand that's why we always do things in a lawful manner, and we always mean what we say and say what we mean, because it's the whole point. Because legalese is deceiving you. It's the undoing the law, which technically speaking, if you've got a license, and I'll say this to all solicitors and barristers, because we are coming for you if you do it. If you have a license to practice legalese, it does not give you the right to practice legalese, or lawfully can you, or legally actually practice legalese on a daily basis in a court. Okay, it is to be used with restraint, and it actually says that when you took it. So I don't understand how you didn't understand that, unless all of you actually know this and you're committing these crimes willingly. No, you can't use legalese you can't use legalese on a daily basis in court because you're undoing law. That's a crime within itself.
Yeah. But you can if you think you're above the law and you're never going to get caught, which they do obviously think that at the moment.
Well, this is the thing, okay? Now, Parliament says this, the courts will say this, any judges say this, no one is above the law. So when people like the Freeman and the Land are trying to sort of put themselves outside law, every judge, and they want to turn around and say, but no one is above the law. Now, for all those who sit there and say Article 61 doesn't exist or it's defunct, understand where that comes from, because the phrase and the view that nobody is above the law, including the king by divine appointment, that he's not above the law, comes from Article 61. Your oath that you take in the army and your oath that you take in the police force is based on Article 61. I know that's not going to be nice for a lot of people who seem to think that Article 61 would be going against their oath in the army or the police, but that's why Article 61 states it doesn't matter what job, where you are, anybody can take this oath because you're lawfully obliged to. The fact you don't. Yeah, it's like some judges that I've gone up in court. If they think I will not be chasing up because there's statute of limitations on fraud, yeah, I can take my sweet ass time doing it basically, because the statute of limitations don't run out. So if they think that I won't come back and I won't then prosecute them for how they've acted while I'm under Article 61 and they're aiding and abetting criminals, if they don't think that once I prove that they was acting criminally because they didn't act under the Queen's command and under the Constitution and what the law subscribes, the fact that they was acting criminally, and this is where it's going to get really interesting because nobody else has thought of this yet, and it sort of, I've been working on this a little bit, but it means all judges, all barristers, all solicitors, all MPs, everybody, technically speaking, would be susceptible to the Thingy of Crimes Act. So basically, I can't. Oh, do you know what? It's just gone from my head, and I know this off by heart. But Proceeds of Crime Act. So basically, so if you could commit a criminal act and you actually benefit from it, you can be prosecuted, because that act is there for that thing. So their own thing can actually do them over. Because if you're a judge and you've been acting unlawfully and you've been acting unconstitutionally, even though the whole point of you being a judge is you take 2 oaths, and one of them is to discharge Her Majesty's obligations under the constitutional law, under the coronation oath. So judges are obliged to act under constitutional law. Okay, above all, constitutional law literally translates to ultimate law. There is no higher. So for all the judges that are doing away with and ignoring common law and the Constitution, and I've actually had a judge say it's not upholdable in civil court, it's upholdable in all courts because everyone's bound by it. Yeah. But if these judges don't think that they cannot be done after, if we can prove for 10 years that you've been a judge, you've been acting constitutionally repugnant, and you've been getting paid for it, yeah, your house is going to get taken, your belongings are going to get taken because that's proceeds of your crimes. So we'll look forward to seeing how many of these MPs that lot keep their little fortunes and that lot, and this whole trust law and this offshore accounts and that lot. Good luck with getting out of the country to get that.
See, this is it, ladies and gentlemen. This can be our great reset. Yeah. Where they've told us by 2030 we'll own nothing, but we'll be happy. Under Article 61, Clause 61, whatever people want to call it, we call it Article 61. Under that, we have the same due process to go through, where if we do it correctly, they will be the ones who end up who own nothing but will be happy, not us.
Yep. It's like Bill Gates says. it's like American laws are very similar to ours. It's like Bill Gates says his best investment and the one that's brought in the most money is vaccination, vaccines. Well, that's a crime because it's administering noxious poisons for a start. It may not be the crime in America, but it certainly is here. But there is similar crimes under the Constitution in America. So if you're in America and you're listening, actually read your Constitution and try to learn it, because a lot of people just take it for what it just sort of they think it means, but it has a deeper meaning. They've just codified it, which means that they sort of put it into one document. So a lot of it's shortened to whereas ours is. I mean, there is differences. I mean, please, people as well, stop sitting there saying that you have a right to bear arms, because you don't. And anybody claiming to be an expert or know the Constitution that states that we have a right to bear arms, you're wrong. Okay. America has the right to bear arms. Okay. So if anything happens, they have a right to pick up weapons and defend themselves. Okay. Ours is different. Okay. We have the constitutional duty to be proficient in arms. Okay. So it starts from when we're younger. We are bound by law to make sure that we are capable of picking up a weapon and defending the realm. By law, we have to be. Okay. In America, you've just got a law that states that if you're being attacked and that you can have the right to bear arms, so you can pick up a weapon and defend yourself. There is a difference. Ours covers a lot more, and it goes a lot further. Like I said, so read it and try and understand it. But there is similarities. So Bill Gates saying the things. I mean, there is proceeds of crime. I mean, it was used against the mafia famously in America. So start using that against Bill Gates, because it's the same as the mafia. He's profited through crimes. Have his fortune taken away from him. Then we can start. I'm not being funny. Once we start removing these fortunes from these people that they've made, imagine how many billions of pounds we can have off Bill Gates that could go to the homeless in America. Imagine all the billions of pounds that can help families and put people on our property ladders and do stuff like that. We can actually start doing something for society, and we can actually help the world if we actually stop attacking the people who are poor and attack these people who are getting rich off these crimes.
And anybody who's sanctioned any of these things, vaccines, etc., and signed to accept them and push them out to the public, that should all be done with murder and attempted murder, because that's exactly what it is. Like you hit the nail on the head earlier, it's administering noxious poisons.
Yeah.
And they haven't gone through the proper procedures like they used to have to do. They're just coming straight out the lab, straight into people's bodies. So the people have now become the guinea pigs.
We'll put it this way, right? In a personal case I have, right, because I do work with other people on cases, but I've had a couple of personal cases. Like Dennis, mate. But in one of my personal cases, okay, it was a family case, and the situation come up that is like, I'm aware with vaccines, certain things like that. I have certain opinions, and I don't wish to have my daughter vaccinated. Okay, don't want her vaccinated. I take it as a crime. Now, my ex's solicitor, her barrister, CAFCAS, and the judge all had the opinion that, well, no, we're just going to agree with whatever the NHS says. And I went, actually, no, we're not. Because if you attempt to do that, and I said, and anybody that even goes anywhere near it, or even tries to, like you just said, if a judge sort of makes a ruling for my ex to vaccinate my child, she is then a co-conspirator, okay, to administer noxious poisons. It's attempted murder, okay, and it is. And a solicitor tried saying, well, I don't think it's a crime, and I'm like, well, I'll tell you what, and to the point where the barrister actually got my ex to drop her case that she tried to bring against me to try and force me to allow my daughter to be vaccinated, because I think they knew damn well that I was going to win, because I stated quite clearly what I was going to use, quite clearly how I was going to use it, because I'm very upfront and forthright. So I told them what I was going to do before I do it. It's their choice whether they allow me to do it or they do allow me the situation to do it. But it was nice meeting you as well, David. Nice to meet you, and Dennis. It was good to meet everybody Saturday, actually.
Yeah, I've got to come next time. I missed it.
But this is the thing. But basically, my ex has now dropped the case. The barrister and everyone don't want to proceed with the case, because if that very case, if they bring that against me, they're all guilty of conspiracy to commit on that action. So that case has now been dropped, and it's off. If basically her legal representation has basically advised her to drop that part of her case. So yeah, so anybody who like the schools and that who really want to start going against us, that's why I notice the schools works and the rest don't, because I base it on the very things that I go up against in court, and I use this against judges, same as schools and that lot with my daughter and that lot. Yeah, they can't do any of this. If they do, they're committing a crime, and it's conspiracy. And once they conspire, that's it. The crime becomes higher, because someone committing murder on their own is one thing, but if a group of people conspire to commit murder, you're actually committing a more heinous crime. Right.
Exactly.
We've gone over 2 hours now.
Yeah,
so
we'll leave it there. And it's good to see you all, ladies and gentlemen. Like I say, we thank you all, as always, for your support.
Yeah, can't thank you enough. It means more than you know.
Yeah, and just
right. I don't know if Gary's going to come back. Because I know. Right. What we'll do is I'm going to leave that there, because we've gone well over. We usually don't like to do more than an hour, because attention spans that lot, and it can get quite complicated, and a lot of people being. So I'll leave it there. So please look out. Gary and myself. Yep, I know. It's because we're talking about certain subjects, because you're not allowed to give people the remedy and explain how the remedy is so simple, because we can then stop them, and that's not what they want. And they control the media. They control all this. So as much as they're finding it hard to attack me and Gary now, because we're actually now doing it, so we're just going to start prosecuting people. They're still going to do it, but it always happens. As soon as we get to the nitty gritty and tell people this is how you stop these people, this is when we get interrupted. This is when everything happens. Or unless I've got a broken wire on my mic, obviously. But no, thank you for tuning in. What do me and Gary will be live again. We're going to look through the feed. We'll try and have a look, see if there's any questions we haven't answered. Please message me or Gary with any questions you want answered, and then me and Gary are doing another live feed the next day or two, and then we'll deal with the questions and that lot. And before we go, can I mention, yes, part 1 of the Constitutional Movement Worldwide manual is out. This is a booklet that is going to be brought out in parts, but it's going to be basically built up to one big book, and it's going to explain all the Constitution. It's going to explain common laws. It's going to explain your inalienable rights. It's going to explain processes. It's going to give you documents and keys and help with processes. So it takes a lot of the hard work out of it for you, but you still actually have to do it yourself. It's just we've taken a lot of the hard work out, so you don't have to research really obscure areas to find it. We've done all that, and we're compiling it in one big book for you. In the next 2 days, next day or so, we will all CMW will also be releasing the YouTube live. It's a video which walks you through as well. So you've got step by step how do you go into lawful rebellion in the pack, and you're also going to have a video. So no matter how you learn, whether it's visually learning or hearing or reading, we've covered all areas. So however you learn best, we've covered it for you. So if you want to do it with the video, there is a video that if you contact us, we'll also help you organise your own night. We've done the video and the pack, so you can actually create your own evening where you help people fill out their forms, and you explain Article 61, and it's all going to be done in it's all free, by the way, as well. So it's all PDFs and it's all video. So all you need really is some way of playing a video to a crowd, and then you can use our tools, and then you can start teaching other people, and we do it for free. So we'd prefer it if people didn't use our stuff to charge. If you charge for using our stuff, we're going to prosecute you. Okay, so please be very careful of that, because we do it for free. We don't charge anyone for anything. Okay, that's why we do the pack as it is. It's just a little bit of work on our thing, and then you do the rest of the work yourself by printing it off and then doing it. It's just we're trying to put the processes together so it's in a nice, easy to read, easy, uniformed way to do it. So please look out for them. They'll be in all CMW groups. They'll also be on Facebook. Me and Gary will be also putting the video and all the other bits out on our Facebook pages as well in the next couple of days. So you'll have it all there. The link to the pack is also in the YouTube video, and like that. It all backs each other up. So wherever you'll go, if you get one, you'll be able to get the other. So thank you for tuning in. And yeah, me and Gary will be live again in the next couple of days. And we're going to be having the British Resistance Group, a few members for them, and a few other groups on with us as well. And we're going to be having a big discussion about 61 and the way we move forward and that soon as well. So look forward to that one. But a lot of things actually are in the pipeline. Like I said, when me and Gary said we're coming back and we're going to pick up the gauntlet again, we meant it. And there's a lot of things that are going to be happening rapidly very soon.
Yeah.
So watch out for that.
The problem has been I've been stuck in Belarus till recently, but
Well, this is the thing. It's like people need to understand, as much as they sort of say, but you're not in the country. It's like you wasn't allowed to come back. Well, it was made impossible for you to come back through to the sanctions. You'd have had to fly halfway across the world to then come back to England. It's just not possible,
yeah,
and you couldn't afford it. Nobody could afford it unless you're
really,
like a millionaire.
no.
It's ridiculous. But yes, right.
Well,
Individual.
the only way I got back this time was on a 30 hours on a couch, and then 2 flights, one from Poland, and then to Amsterdam and Amsterdam here. So I got it back the best and the cheapest way I could, but I managed to get here in the end.
And I might
It
add as
wasn't
well,
because
Gary. Yeah, even though the sanctions stopped Gary, because all it was he didn't have the money to like travel, do like a 80 days around the world sort of thing.
yeah,
Then but so it wasn't thingy. But Gary travelled throughout the pandemic to Belarus to see his wife and back here and that lot until the sanctions hit, with when Russia's been labelled like thingy. But he was travelling throughout the pandemic, and we both was with no mask, no other restrictions because we use our unalienable rights to do so.
yeah. And I've proved that many times during the pandemic as well. But the main thing was that was out of my hands. And the other thing they did, because of the sanctions, the banks now, when you go abroad, especially in Russia, anybody who's going, make sure you take plenty of money because to put a stop on your card, you can't use any cash machines. The cash just they don't give you any cash. And only certain shops, like the spas over there, we have spa here, they have spa there. The big spas, shops like Spa, will accept your card. But the little shops, like your corner shops and all that, you can't go and buy cigarettes or groceries
Because
from them because they
it's not
won't accept your
guaranteed.
card.
It's not
No.
guaranteed because it's all done on promissory notes, like we was discussing earlier.
Yeah.
Everything's been done on
Yeah.
promissory notes for nearly 100
No,
years, I think now. Or over.
I'm just explaining to people who are going, make sure they take the money if they do ever go there at the moment while it's like this, because you have a ride game, only certain places accept your card.
Mm.
But it's and it was like a war
Yeah.
zone on the Belarusian Polish border, but that was another story. But I'm back anyway, and that's the main thing. So
Yep, and yeah, we're going to be back. I'm not being funny. It's like I said, it's like Gary sort of says he's been things we haven't been doing. I think it's like, but we have been doing stuff in courts and other bits. But it's like
yeah,
it's kind of a bit upsetting, really, because even though there is people still doing it, and most of us actually turn to the courts to prove our things we have, but everything kind of died off a lot, and it's like now we've come back and we said we want to do certain things. There seems to be a lot of people trying to beat us to the punch again. It's like, well, not be funny. You lot crack on, okay? If you want to do it the way you're saying you're going to do it, you crack on, okay? You crack on. We don't mind. We'll do it our way. You do it your way. All I know is we went into the Fabian Society, which is a secret society within itself. We arrested 5 MPs. We had them put under investigation by the police. Had evidence of their crimes, and we proven that. The police backed us, and it actually went to CPS. So when you not actually get anywhere near that, because barristers have tried, solicitors have tried, MPs have tried, and then they've got nowhere near what we've got. No one's ever actually got a case to go to CPS, and can be so close to being brought to court before. So I'm sorry
because we
when
did
you
it the
get that
correct way.
exactly. So when you get that close, that lot, yeah, then by all means we'll actually join you. But why we're not going to join with people and help people that are going to be doing it unlawfully or think they can act outside the law? Because if you don't
Right
know
from
the
the
law, you
tangents.
don't know if you're acting outside the law. So be careful. And
Yeah.
that's what we do with a lot of groups with CMW. All we don't control others. We don't tell other groups what to do. Groups come to us usually and they say, right, we're thinking about doing this. What are going to be the problems? And then we tell them what problems they can do and if they can get around it or if not. If they want to do it, they do it. If they don't, they don't. It's up to them. But we just advise.
Yeah.
That's all we do. That's it.
We don't tell anybody they can't do this, they can't do that. We say, oh, if you're going to do this and you're going to do that, you might see problems. But we leave the decision whether the action happens to them or not. But then they can't say they wasn't told.
Yeah, exactly.
That's simple.
Exactly. And
But
like I said, it's like if you're talking rebellion and you're talking about everyone doing certain things, you better make. And I'm not being funny. It's like I've spoke to serving constables. I've spoken to ex-constables, and I'm not being funny. I'm very worried because I happen, and I can know this and not be funny. It's probably unless you was actually trained at least in the early 80s. I'm going to say all constables pretty much are the same. Now, I went to the High Court of Appeal with a corona case that they arrested me for outside Scotland Yard. That's disappeared for some reason, by the way. I don't know what's happened with that, but it's just
And that, I
disappeared.
was at that one as well.
Yeah, it's just got
I was
gone
at
into
that
thin air.
trial. Yeah.
But the police are like, when I was actually, because I do the same thing. I intend to do a couple of judges as well. I'm actually going to pull them into court and I'm going to put them on the stand and I'm going to cross-examine them because I have the right to challenge. So I will. And I had the right to challenge the constable that arrested me. So I got him on the stand and I asked this constable, and it was a very simple question to the point even a judge kind of laughed at it because of the constable's like response. But I asked the constable quite clearly why he was on the stand. I said, "Constable, are you constitutionally able?" And he asked me, "What does that mean?" Which answered my question, because if you do not know that being constitutionally able, the abbreviation is constable, then I'm sorry, you shouldn't be in that uniform. You should not be doing that job. And I'm sorry, but most of them do not know the Constitution. So to automatically think that the police know the law, you've got another thing coming, because a lot of them know parliamentary statutes and they do not know the Constitution and they do not know common law, even though they swore an oath to uphold it. So please be very careful when dealing with certain things, and just because a constable says something, you don't have to believe him, because there is evidence other places. So be careful. But like I said, don't take mine and Gary's word for it. We give you the sources of where we get our stuff from, so you can go and check it out yourself. Okay, we don't just expect you to believe us. In fact, we ask you, and we keep asking you, so throw us questions, scrutinise what we're doing.
And do your own research.
Yeah.
Check it out, say what we're saying is right.
But like I said, when we say things about Article 61, that is something that you can't interpret. At the end of the day, you've got one of two choices to make there. If you're not under Article 61, you're helping the criminals do all these crimes. So you're actually aiding and abetting. So you're just as responsible for committing these crimes on the people as these MPs. So make a choice. You're either in 61 and you're acting lawfully and you're trying to stop it, or you're not under 61 and you're part of the problem. So that's it. So, and that's me. Right, but I'm going to go because it's been a long. This is probably one of the longest ones we've done, actually. But yes, we'll be live again in the next couple of days. So please tune in. Keep an eye on Facebook. Keep an eye on YouTube. That lot. We will be about.
Nice to speak to everybody again. Well, see everybody on our lives now again. Like I said, thank you for your support, and we'll speak to you all soon. And we do it because we care. Just remember that.
As I said, this is why we don't charge people money, is because we have a passion. And not being funny, passion drives us all. And I'm not being funny. If you're passionate about something, you shouldn't have to be compensated for it, really, technically speaking. And to have all these crimes stopped and have our rights back completely unmolested, yeah, it's worth it for me. And like I said, I'm not being funny. If you're trying to get money out of, and I will say this as well, be very, very careful, because if you're trying to get money out of the situation we're in, it's actually technically profiteering, because crimes and things are happening and you're trying to profit from that. So it's profiteering. So again, you could land yourself in court. So be very careful. That's why we don't do it, because we don't profiteer. We are not going to get money off the back of you having some sort of disadvantage or some sort of thing happen to you. That's profiteering. Okay, so your anguish should not be our benefit, and if it is, you're committing a crime. So unlucky to a lot of people. But I'm sorry, but I'm no longer going to be thinking. The law is the law, and we just can't do it no more. It's enough's enough. It's getting ridiculous now. So it's 1 to 3. Right, we are going to go. Keep saying it, but right, I'm going to end the broadcast. Right, thank you for tuning, everybody, and we will see you later. I'll bell you. Well, I'll probably bell you in a bit, or I'll bell you tomorrow, Gary. I need to do so first. Right. See you later, everyone. Take care and get into lawful rebellion now.
Yes.
Stop committing crimes. Be on the right side of the law.
Your constitution is the solution.
Right. Night, everyone.
Night.
Ended it now. Right. No.
Yeah. Right.